Welcome to episode 61 of Kontrarian Korner. I'm Ben Keller. Today I'm recording the first in-person episode of the podcast and got invited to do this by EM Burlingame, and he brought Clay Martin to tag along. So
tag along.
A pretty interesting conversation. Definitely two guys with lots of experience in a wide variety of fields. So I think it'll be a good conversation. So I'm very excited to do it and definitely looking forward to it. So we were talking before we started recording, and the kind of news going on, what's going on right now. Everyone's talking about Epstein and who's on the list, who's not on the list. Is the list real?
Is there a list?
Yeah.
Did Epstein exist?
Did Epstein kill himself? Is it all just AI? But anyway, I figured it'd be a good place to start, and we could see where it takes us. But I think the big overarching picture of what I kind of see with that whole debacle or shit show, whatever you want to call it, is there's a lot of blackmail in politics, and it's basically one-time use. You don't get it back after you shoot that gun, so to speak. So that's kind of my high-level view, but I'd love to hear what you guys...
She either gets pregnant or she doesn't.
Yeah, there's no... you can't... basically, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. I gotta say that I don't feel very contrarian on this couch, though. It's fucking nice.
Nice and laid back.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. This is funny. I gave up on the Epstein shit like 6 months, maybe a year ago. Definitely after the first time Pam Bondi was like, I'm going to release it Monday morning, and then nothing happened. I was like, okay, fuck, this is going nowhere. A lot of people are very upset, though, because I don't know, this feels like the Q thing where they keep getting set up for failure. And people keep buying it, and it's shitty because Trump's burned a lot of political capital, in my opinion, too. People were really expecting something to come out and be like, yeah, my bad, there is no list, and Epstein killed himself. People were fucking upset in a way that I haven't seen them upset in a long time.
Well, I think people want to see heads roll, basically.
Yeah, no shit. And we don't care whose it is. Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, whatever the fuck they call it. Yeah, we don't give a shit. Fucking... it does look very much like, the new powers that be got called in a room like, hey, check it out, Holmes, here's what's actually up. And then they just folded like a cheap suitcase. Here we are.
How about you?
I think that's partially true. I also don't care about the blackmail. I don't like the things that happen, but, operationally, very much to what you said about blackmail is a one-time use. It only works actually on about 1% to 3% of people, and it's got a limited life. And that tends to be an age thing because it turns out even the soulless bastards that run shit, they tend to get a conscience, not all of them, but especially the males tend to seem to get a conscience sometime just before they die, right? If they do that or not, or the reverse, whatever the hell it is, right?
Is it the blade strokes? Or
something. Okay, the seppuku, so blackmail doesn't work terribly well, and it doesn't last. And I know guy Patrick Ryan, he did something some years ago, back in 16 to 20, and about called blackmail inflation, where the way in which you just undo blackmails, you blackmail everybody about everything, and then nobody gives a shit anymore, right? I'm not concerned with the blackmail. I don't like, of course, the whole underage thing and the sex thing, etc. But that's a tiny fraction of what was actually happening. Why did they do that? What was the purpose of blackmailing those people? What was being put into place? And every time we start to get beyond the list and the pedophilia stuff to start looking at how the infrastructure is and what this fucking infrastructure is, boop, they throw the list thing out there again. So what happened yesterday? BRICS did their joint statement after this BRICS meeting. It's very interesting, this whole Epstein thing, not signed, by the way, at least the documents that are online, etc. No formal statements. Comes out on Sunday. Usually the administration does it on Friday. Right? So I don't know. I look at that and I'm like, what the hell are they distracting us from? Because another thing, as a former intel targeting guys, how many years are we into this list? And it's been in the hands of the government for how long? And the government has turned over how many times? And how the fuck am I supposed to trust anything? Right?
it also makes you wonder if they're stalling a little bit for AI video to get just a little bit better, because it's almost
Possibly.
at which point anything digital from the last 30, 50, fucking 100 years is out the window.
Yeah.
It was a fake.
Yeah. So for me, I don't care about the list anymore. It's a distraction, right? It's like that.
Red herring for
It's like the young stripper with a nice ass that they put out in front of you before all the ugly ones come on stage.
I have no idea what you're talking
For guys who are at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, at some point, Sharkies maybe. Well, you were married at the time, so disregard. But
I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway,
yeah. Point being is, I don't care about the list. I think it's all distraction this time. Every time it comes up, it's distraction. It's not relevant. It doesn't matter. It needs to be dealt with. Those networks need to be undone. But what I'm really concerned about is what was put in place by Maxwell Epstein operation, going back to her father and going back a generation before to the 1940s with Steve Cohen and Meyer Lansky and the others. That's what I'm concerned with. And the timing of it exactly coinciding with the BRICS statement is really suspect, which goes into what I was saying about what was the BRICS statement. It was directly articulating the counter to the infrastructure that was put in place with all of this.
Yeah, I think the other thing too that basically gets lost in the shuffle with Epstein is the financial transactions and the money flows
Correct.
that he is tied to. That
Correct. What was
Mossad, CIA, whatever you want to throw, whatever names you want to throw out there, that always plays second fiddle to the island, underage girls, all the stuff that is that headline
that's the shit
attention
people can
grabber.
relate to. Like a normal chucklehead that doesn't know anything about finance, so they can relate to. That's why it's worked so well too. That's why they've been able to throw this out 15 fucking times to distract us from whatever's going on.
Yeah. So
it's great.
It's like that old progressive ad with the guy with the fish hook and the dog.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Yeah.
So what's cover for action and status?
Right. Yeah.
What was all that, right? Cover for action. Oh, you're doing something absolutely horrible, but I don't want you to see that. And what were they doing? They were putting in this theft of the commons, which is our economic present and futures.
Right.
And then mass depopulation in order to make sure that you don't come after them for stealing everything.
Right.
And then a world war to hide all of that, mask all that, and kill all those that you couldn't depopulate through their own choice with some jab, etc. And what's all the money laundering systems and structures and all that? Because that's what Epstein used to do at Bear Stearns. That's Epstein's actual background. People forget that. How did Epstein become so wealthy? It wasn't just because intelligence agents gave him a bunch of money. He was a financial mathematical whiz.
So say intelligence agents don't have that much money. So
Correct.
really.
Well, that they can publicly demonstrate.
Right.
Yeah. Now they'll give you contracts and deals you can grow the wealth, right? But they can't just give you billions and billions of dollars. So that's who he really was. All of this is cover for action and status. Cover for action, what? Meeting with all these people and having all these conversations. That's the action. Cover for status. Why the hell are you in these meetings with these people outside the islands and all of that? Why are you in the White House 13 times or whatever? Why are you meeting with this head of state or this middle level management person somewhere? That's cover for status. Cover for action is what were you actually doing during all that time?
Yeah, I think to kind of maybe move on from the Epstein thing before we derail for too long, but it's
before we start yelling down with the Jews, which is a bunch of bullshit. But
it's a fascinating topic, but I think it's something where we could pretty easily spend 3 hours back and forth on
and get nowhere.
I think the thing that I wanted to pull on the thread that you kind of mentioned as far as the health side of things, you mentioned it before and we talked about it when we've been up skiing, is some of the stuff around health and food, nutrition, all the stuff that really is kind of not talked about widely, but everyone knows something's wrong when you look at, 75% of the country's overweight, not in shape. You have declining birth rates. You have other issues. Autism basically tracks a chart of the childhood vaccine, number of vaccines. I'll leave it at that. But I think there are a bunch of things health-wise that I think it would be interesting to have you lead off and see where we take it from there.
So not to go too deep into that, but to go, I mean, it's very important. That's the work we're doing, National Foundation for Integrated Medicine, and Dr. Dimitri and Dr. Ovakaitis at Gematria, and Keygenics and Key Generations, et cetera, right? And a lot of other great, Dr. Kathleen Smith O'Neill out in Boston and some others, right? So we'll get back, maybe I'll bring it back to healthcare is World War III. World War III is happening. It's not in Russia. It's not in Iran. It's not going to be in Taiwan or around Taiwan. It's being fought out right now in every cell in every person's body. So that is the war, the war that we have to win.
Well, I think that's a particularly interesting subject too, because it's not something that a lot of us thought about until like 2020.
Yeah.
It was really
correct.
Like the COVID bullshit.
Yeah.
Like,
even though it's been going on for 40 years. Yeah.
Somebody like me, I didn't think about those things until I thought about that. Sort of like digging into the pharmaceutical stuff. Looking at vaccines and small children. That basically leads you in the rabbit hole of food, and you're like, oh my God. Like, this is infinitely worse than I ever thought it could be.
Yeah.
So big tobacco, when they were losing, went and bought Nabisco and food companies, and then they went and bought pharmaceutical companies.
Amazing. Mix all this shit together.
Right?
What do we get?
Where did that all start? And people can look this up, right? Where did it all start? Air Force Medical. Okay. General Armstrong, modern healthcare system, all of that comes from Air Force Medical. Okay. Who was brought over from Nazi Germany to work directly with General Armstrong to lead Air Force Medical? Mengele's boss's boss, General Schubert, or whatever the hell his name is. I'm terrible with names on purpose. That way, if I get rolled up, I can't, right?
My German is atrocious.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. Just don't show me a picture. That mother. Yeah, no. So this war's been going on forever. The whole knowledge, the experiments that the Nazis did on people were extensive, unreal extensive, and they documented all of that. None of that was lost. None of it was taken out and righteously burned. No, we brought the boss of the boss of the boss of the whole thing to head up Air Force Medical, what would become NASA Medical, the whole medical industry, etc. So what did we do? What did they do? What did they learn in World War II? If you want to fight wars on the fields, you're going to lose at some point. Let's virtualize the war into the information space, 5th gen warfare, and let's put it in people's cells.
Put fluoride in the water. I think that was
fluoride was the first one, major.
And they've had to admit that one too within like.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fluoride in the water.
Mercury in your teeth.
Mercury.
Right.
You go down the list, but the funny thing that is interesting for me, especially over the last handful of years, like I kind of the same thing where one rabbit hole leads to the next.
Right.
And that's like 2020, where it's like, okay, why are they offering free Krispy Kreme donuts for a year if you get like the clot shot?
Right.
And
hold on.
And you're not a cop.
And that was the red flag for the alarm bell going off for me at least. And I started to look into that. I started looking into the health stuff, and I basically have come to the conclusion that stuff like seed oils is basically just
the devil.
It's just engine lubricant.
And
basically.
they know better, and they've known better.
Yeah, did it on purpose. The other thing is GMO food, right? Where did all these people become obese? When we started using GMO crops. Why? Because there's no nutrition. In order for them to have the properties that they claim, shelf stable at the store, and it's all economically articulated, and pesticides bad and all of that, although there's natural pesticides like nicotine.
Amazing.
Right? Amazing. Right? Why? Because every time they genetically modified that, they remove nutrition. You take these fat people today, you put them on a carnivore diet, healthy meat. Not you got to be careful with the way the meat's raised too. So it doesn't have all this crap in it as well. But you do it on healthy meat. You get them on like A2 milk with heavy cream and fat in it. Yeah. Even people that have, quote unquote, lactose intolerance, that are of European descent, because there are folks around the world that don't have whatever the enzymes are to break down lactose. Right? So that's fact. But you get them on that, and there's a lady, Mimi Rogers, I think her name is. She's got a Twitter account, big following. She's 70, I think now. Yeah. And she did this. She was obese for years. She got on a carnivore diet. She's 70, works her ass out. She's looking awesome. Yeah. Right? Why? Because she started eating food that actually had nutrition in it. Right. That's why they call grocery stores food deserts. That's what we call them in the I don't want to say alternative medicine because it's not. We've got surgeon generals, assistant surgeon generals, real medical doctors. Dr. Ovakaitis went to Georgetown and Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
But they call grocery stores food deserts.
They should. It's mostly filth. Yeah,
It's
amazing.
You got all these opportunities with nothing in them.
Right.
Well, that's the trick. Is if you most grocery stores are set up where if you just stick to the perimeter, it's basically eggs or dairy or whatever on the back wall, and then fruit, vegetables off to one side, and then the processed garbage is all in the middle.
Right.
Yeah,
And
easy to find. Yeah,
in the store.
I mean, it's amazing to me that you have like even seasonings where you're like, I just want something to put on the steak. You have to like look at the ingredients.
All
on
right,
that.
yeah.
It's not just salt, pepper, and whatever else.
There's
It's
all kinds of chemicals.
that's why you make your
like
own.
sunflower oil. And
Yeah,
all this other junk. But,
Getting purely away from seed oils is like the hardest thing you can do.
yeah.
You
it's in everything.
everything.
It's like high fructose corn syrup.
you
It's
can
in
end up with,
everything.
bits of it at least, unless you're
Yeah.
like growing your own everything.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like you go out to a restaurant, it's like if
it's
you
over.
get
Yeah,
French fries or anything, then it's they're not cooking that in lard or
didn't-
tallow. So
Didn't McDonald's switch back to tallow? I think
no, it was Five Guys.
Five Guys.
One of the major chains.
Five
Yeah,
Guys or
yeah,
Shake
yeah.
Shack or
One of the bigger, one of the not
Yeah.
the biggest chain, one of the top 10 chains. Did.
Yeah,
no. I think the health topic is interesting because
that's where the war is playing out.
where
That's where World War III is actually happening every minute of the day, and it's killing more people every day than all the conflict, the gun conflicts in the world combined.
you know
And they're making the amount of money that's been made off of war pales in comparison to the amount of money being made off of health care,
Oh yes.
yeah
Yeah.
right? It's something like $5 trillion in the United States right now, roughly. And that takes nothing into account the food that's all, so it's all one system,
Right.
right?
yep
Healthcare, pharmaceuticals,
Insurance companies,
medical,
yeah.
insurance companies, and the food. It's all one big thing. Well, it's easily
They're all feeding
half
same-
the economy.
Right.
They're all feeding the same trough basically. But you'd mentioned some of the things where like you're shopping for kids and some of the health things there. Like when I remember
Shopping for your kids, not shopping for kids. Going back to the Epstein freaking statement.
but when you go and look at the eating habits of kids that are in say elementary school, like I remember what I used to eat, it was not healthy and it was basically like pulling teeth trying to stop me from eating candy and all this other stuff. What's the what's your focus as far as doing that for younger kids? And basically you have to do stuff to guide them in the right direction on that.
One, it's extremely difficult. Two, it's like not letting them get addicted to alcohol or heroin. Never let them have the bad stuff in the first place.
Yep.
Because that's one of the bad things about it too. It's addictive because all the things that suck that are bad for you have been like chemically refined to make you want them more.
Yeah.
It's difficult enough as an adult that knows better. If you ever let them like sample the goods, like you're gonna have an uphill battle.
Yeah, Halloween.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And if anything, I think it's gotten worse with red dyes and all this crazy stuff and drinks or pretty much anything you can buy for a kid that he wants to eat. Most of it's garbage.
Yeah.
So it just takes a lot of effort to stop that.
There's if you get them conditioned right in the first 5 years, their taste buds are pretty much set.
Yes, true. That's
right.
true.
And a lot of that's inherited, actually, your taste appetites. So as a parent, before for you're younger, right? So for you and the wife, before you're having a kid and as you're, she's gestating the kid, eat healthy foods. Turns out kids, whatever the mother's eating, the kid's taste buds are oriented to that while she's pregnant.
Guess I have a good excuse to be cooking lots of steak and eggs then.
So it starts there, and then up through about the first 5 years, as first 3.5 years specifically, but really first 5 years, the neurological system, taste buds, appetite, all of that is laid down by about 3.5 years of age, and then over the next several years, up to about 7, but you can get it up to about 5 if you need to. But going up to 7, you just make sure, because they're under your control mostly,
Right.
you make sure that they eat the right things, and you reward them socially, personally, relationship wise for doing that, and you do it yourself. By that time, that system's locked in. And what you're trying to do from about 3.5 to 7 is help them deprogram from the social pressures later of, well, we're all eating this or,
Right.
Et cetera, so that they go with what their taste buds actually want and don't go to the drugs.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's kind of the kid equivalent of, oh, we're just going out to have a beer and out to have a drink, all that stuff. But it is
15 beers later.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Three packages of Skittles later.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
Be bouncing off the walls with that much sugar. But it is one of those things where, like, you talk about World War III, and it doesn't look the same as past.
But that's how slavers work, right? They evolve.
Exactly. You have the health stuff, you have the media and the propaganda, and I think that would be a good place to kind of get into next. And I see it all the time, like when all this stuff with the LA riots and all that was getting going.
Which ones?
Yeah, but I mean, there's lots of stuff where you just see
Karen Bass, good Karen Bass. Who does she work for? She was educated in Cuba as a Marxist, and then she worked for the agency, for the NGOs that were defunded by USAID, and she was involved, directly funded and involved in like 4 color revolutions or color revolution attempts in the last 10 years alone.
Yeah. I think,
and now she's the mayor of LA, with the most solid, trusted voting in the entire world.
Right.
Yeah.
Stomping my foot a little.
Yeah. It is interesting. I'm not sure if you have any comparisons to what's going on now in the U.S. to maybe stuff that you've seen in your career in other parts of the world, but I think that would be a pretty interesting rabbit hole if you have some direct experience with.
Well, it's funny because that's when this all tied together. It's all run by this. All the propaganda is run by the same people anyway. In theater, out of theater, whatever. It's all run by the same people.
It's all one big theater now.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and it has been for some time.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be perfectly honest. Even knowing what I knew from the war zones, it really took until the COVID thing until I woke up to that fact. For whatever reason, like, I kind of knew that, like, the news cycle was doing certain things, helping us in certain ways. Sometimes, they're working against us too. Many times, pointing things in our favor over the course of the war. But it took until this to, like, realize how on the same sheet of music and bought page that they are, and run from a much higher level than I would have ever anticipated.
Yeah,
it's been pretty wild though to see, if you're my age, alternative media come out and kind of provide this different mindset. Now you're seeing the war against that. It's starting to be a backlash against that. Things are getting shut down. The internet's been basically broken for like 3.5 years. It's very hard to find things that Google's buried in its search functions. We had a momentary respite when Elon bought Twitter, but he's kind of turned into a nutcase this week. And
now it's just a bot farm.
That's going to go. Yeah, so it's a back and forth.
No, what do you do when your security is owned by? When you're a high net worth person in the United States, UK, Europe, your security comes out of a very small handful of organizations because you can't get insured liability wise if they don't have certain pedigrees, which is created that way on purpose. So how do you know the loyalty of every individual on your security team? And how do you know whether they're under duress or not? Maybe they're not doing something because they want to, or they're against you. Maybe they're very loyal to you, but they got a package of pictures of their kids at school.
Right.
Or they got a visit. Excuse me. You and I said this before, I think a couple of years ago. What happens when one of their old colleagues comes out and says, hey, I'd like some information. It's nothing, negative against it, but I'd like some information. It's like, well, where's your loyalty lie? Right? This family might lose everything or might be taken out, and I'm out of a job. If I stay loyal, if I don't respond and give the information that I'm being asked, well, I'm asked out of that network, and that's my power network.
Yep.
I can always get another job as long as I'm loyal to the regime, directly or indirectly. It doesn't matter how loyal I want to be to that family. It's always a problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, how did we lose to the Taliban? How did we lose to all the different groups in Iraq? How the hell did we lose in Vietnam? They had their families. They offered them things that we can go have a conversation and get them ideologically aligned, but when it comes down to the hard reality is, who can get to your kids? Who's going to protect your kids? Who's going to protect your spouse, your brothers? we're not going to be, we're not putting security details around, all the family members of some village, or Orofino's top leadership,
Right.
here in the country. We think that doesn't happen here. Like somehow miraculously, we're going to be immune to the ways in which we were undone in these other countries.
Yeah. I think to add to your point, I think a lot of this stuff, the pure power politics, it's not as public as it might be in other parts of the world, where you look at what's going on in some place in South America or Asia, Africa, and it's pretty obvious the like feuds and all this stuff, where it seems to be mostly behind the scenes in Western society. But I think one of the things...
Well, it's to the propaganda, as you say. It's there if you're paying attention locally. You can see it. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
But, to what you guys were saying about the psyops, the cycle, fifth-gen warfare. Everybody, what is fifth-gen warfare? It's just clever lying. I mean, that's just... boil it down to it, right? It's just very clever lies. And a lot of us want to believe in some of those lies, but it's happening here. When you look just a little bit locally, it's why they do all this big stuff nationally, because if you can't do fuck all about something at a national level. Only the people who play at that level can do anything. Now we can influence it, etc. But while I'm busy paying attention to some spat between Elon and Trump, I'm not paying attention to what the mayor in my own freaking town's doing.
Right.
And who they're aligning with, and how the sheriff's, acting unconstitutionally. And
yeah.
So it's there if we look, but we keep getting distracted. So I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
With all the propaganda flying, it's easy to get kind of caught up chasing the shiny object, so to speak. But one of the things you were mentioning, how internet's basically been broken for the last 3 years. And one of the things I've started to notice is the establishment type people starting Substacks or moving independent. Yes. And you see other people that pop up and they have 50 or 100,000 Twitter followers overnight, and they are making you suddenly have a 6-figure Substack that you
and you're making 30 to 50,000 a month off of it.
Just subversive enough over here to attract people, also. Yeah, and they're all fucking bought and paid for it.
Yeah,
you're seeing that more and more. You see them occasionally get nuked for it too. Somebody will, but they'll build another one tomorrow. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's the thing too, is you have all that where I think the writing's been on the wall for cable news, mainstream media, whatever you want to call it, for a long time. I think the people basically pulling levers have just started to wake up to that fact in the last, since 2020, but really the last 2 to 3 years, and realizing that social media is by far, is far and away more powerful today than what they might be able to get their audience to watch. Which, that's the thing too, is the average age of a MSNBC viewer is 70 or 75 or whatever it is. So their whole audience is going to be gone in 10, 20 years. And everyone knows about the pharma advertising and where they get their revenue. So I think the move to social media, I was kind of optimistic about Elon and the whole Twitter thing, but it seems like he's determined to do, I saw something about some America Party or some other garbage. And of course he has like an H-1B running it, shocker. But
well, the thing you always have to stay where your mind has to be with this. The enemy's adaptive. All right, they're smart. You're never going to just.
They're a virus.
They are a fucking.
They're like HIV.
You're going to have to keep adapting and keep fighting. And your tactic, your awesome tactic you came up with, wins for about a year, and it's an arms race. So that is where we are. It's the same thing as when they stopped buying newspapers and started buying radio stations.
Yep.
You don't buy the radio station when 1 out of 100 Americans has a radio. Who gives a fuck? When everybody has a radio, you do. So this is the way. Television's dead. Owning the guys on Fox News doesn't fucking matter anymore. Or it won't matter in 5 more years. But yeah, we're going to see a lot more of this. We're already seeing it. Even with Elon and his good guy free speech shit, you're seeing people still get squeezed out of Twitter and out of his space. Truth Social, does anybody even use that bullshit? Yeah, I don't know. There'll be back and forth loops, and it's just always going to be that way.
Yeah. Do you see? I'm not sure if you see it with what you do, but I know that every time I tweet out a link or something to the Substack, it'll get I mean, 10% of the impressions that any like throwaway tweet might get. Do you see some of the other like mechanisms that they use to throttle certain things?
Yeah, and I mean, this just goes back to good engineering. They want you to stay on their platform without the external links, and yes, we use the advertising dollars, and
it's dopamine addiction.
Yes.
So the way what we have to understand is that they use algorithms. Algorithms are designed in certain ways. I've written a piece on this, a couple pieces. Those algorithms are both designed, tested, and assessed by people who went to liberal arts schools and have, for the most part, never lived in the real world, never been a first responder, never been in combat, frontline combat, or combat at all, right? These are people who, for the most part, with some exceptions, never lived in poverty.
Right.
Never had to hurt for anything, never had to want for anything.
Went from college to either academia or government.
Well, and maybe even prep school. You know, they went from private schools to elite universities because in this artificial world, they're very smart. They're very, very knowledgeable and can do very well on an IQ test. And they're good at math, and they're good at statistics, and they're good at, you know, all these little skills. Problem is, and the ones that are, you know, providing the valence valuations on linguistic models are the same thing. But the other, for all of them, I don't know and I come from Silicon Valley. I did my doctoral studies in this area. I've worked in the space for a very long time. I don't know a single individual who is involved in any algorithm AI development that's ever been in a real fist fight. Right. So how do you, if you're one of these people, how do you get laid?
Build a better.
Well, money and deception.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
right. It's like the guy, you know, it's like you go to the local college bar after the game and all the jocks they get all the girls. But how do you get some girls? How do you get some, well, I see you, understand, you know, it's a whole different kind of conversation where you're sucking up to the girls so you can hope, you know, you hope you can go home with somebody because the jocks are there and they've already got, well, that's AI. That's the algorithms. That's technology. That's the entire tech industry with some tiny exceptions. And those guys aren't in AI development. They aren't in language model development, et cetera. So you have a whole system that's skewed away from reality because there isn't any real male testosterone, masculine, defensive, protection shit in it. And so what does it do? Well, when somebody comes in with the same thing at the party, okay, so you're having a party, it's a bunch of, you know, non-athletic kind of guys. I'm just using this as an example. And girls, and then a jock shows up, a good one, well known. Everybody, you know, a good amount of the attention goes to him. But there's also another good amount of attention that knows they're never going to be out compete him. What do they try to do? Take him down, parry him down, figure out some other way to diminish him, make him irrelevant in the party, isolate him. It's the same thing that's happening on social platforms for the last 15 years. Why? Because the algorithms are developed by those people at that party.
And they're designed to have people, like, whether it's kayfabe or not is up for debate for a lot of these things.
Well, how do you get that guy out of the party? You get him to go fight another tough guy.
Yeah, I mean...
Or you make accusations and claims about him, you know, toxic, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, I mean, you see the social media stuff where some of the, like, fights or conflicts, whatever, is definitely, like, made up, but I think it's always interesting to see some of that stuff where people just lose their minds over insults and all this other stuff when what they really should do is just close their phone. But I think the one thing that I think would be interesting to get into is AI, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because I look at it and people talking about, oh, it's going to be a general intelligence and AI is going to take all these jobs. Like the idea that some guy sitting in a basement could basically put the spark of life into a machine, I just don't think it's going to happen.
I don't buy it for a fucking second either. I mean, it's going to hurt graphic designers and it's going to hurt mediocre writers.
Yeah,
I mean, it already has, because it's actually easier for me to do AI than it is to pay a guy in fucking Pakistan $100 because this understands me better. But for low level
and middle
shit,
management,
it can never create art. You know, so it's not going to put it can't create, you know, high level fucking writing. But for For like low level people, it's going to hurt them. But in general, I'm not scared of AI either. Like,
well, strategy, analytics, again, it's missing an entire segment of reality.
Right.
Men, actual no shit men, and healthy women, and
Right.
etc. So it's missing an entire half of the population's cognitive capacities, ways of thinking, ways of approaching things. It's got the Disney-fied kind of way of looking at the world. Meanwhile, I say it this way. I said this 25, 30 years ago in Silicon Valley. You all are doing things here because you're living in a protected bubble. And we create that bubble so that you can innovate and create these things that we wouldn't have thought of and we don't have time for. And that's awesome. But you're living in a protected bubble. And it was fine until we started getting into large language models, and large language models started to take over everything, which, by the way, the large language models were intentionally developed in the height of wokeism. That wasn't done accidentally. So all of this language training about what language means, sentence structures, all of this was all done intentionally. So all the base core back end of AI right now is trained on wokeism.
Interesting.
And it was done on purpose. So in the book, The Eternal War, right, I wrote one of the doctrines is agenda, right? Lines of effort and doctrine is agenda. What is the agenda? To just like a virus, to infect the next host. In this case, what is the next host? The future generations.
Right.
The systems and structures and processes, the institutions that the next generations are going to use.
I'll tell you, perhaps the one thing that does scare me about AI, and again, it's not like I think it's going to be general intelligence or some bullshit like that, is the over-reliance on it because you can't.
Yes.
And there were a couple of studies, like recent studies in the last year or so, that show that basically it's making people dumber. It's making people dumber in the same way that the internet made us dumber.
Yeah.
Do you remember, we're old now, but do you remember even 25 years ago when you had to, like, you were driving across the country, you had to look at where you were going and remember?
Yeah.
And I could do that. You could do that too.
Yeah.
I can't now because
or phone numbers or.
Well, I've spent 15 years just like the young guys with my phone on autopilot.
Slap an address.
Yeah,
in.
and so I've found myself in a place for like 3 or 4 weeks, and this is like borderline embarrassing, but it's true. I don't know where the fuck I'm at. Like, my phone, it's made me dumber.
Yeah,
like, all these things, not having to remember things.
Spatial recognition is being lost.
Just general awareness anyway, because I don't have to anymore.
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah.
I can see AI being a real problem with that. Even already in the way that some people use it to write their majors and shit, write their theses in college. They've admitted to that.
Yeah,
it does have a potential to make us dumber because it does a little bit of light thinking.
The thing that it will be interesting to see is, like, I've talked to a couple people and their couple family members that are just heading off to college this year, and I basically said that, like, if I could go back, if I were 18 now, like, I would not be heading to college.
I can't know.
I am not interested in competing with people that are just going to submit AI slop, and then the teachers are going to use the same models to grade it, and then you have this back and forth, and you pay 50, 60 grand if you go out of state. Yeah. And for most of these things, like, especially for what I'm focused on, whether it's financial markets or current events, the so-called YouTube University, there's plenty of guys out there that'll give you a ton of good free information. Yeah. It's like, just flip on a 1-hour podcast that'll be at least as good, if not 10 times better than most college lectures on
almost like that's what education was intended to be, except now we can scale it with YouTube. Yeah,
well, it's Scholas, right? Yeah. The old Scholas Academy.
The best guy in the world or the 1,000th best guy in the world at University of Idaho or fucking
yeah, exactly.
You want to learn from the guy that's actually doing it and capturing it on video, or the person who can't do it but learned it from a book and is now going to.
Right. Yeah,
I'd rather learn from the guy that's actually out doing it. Like what you do.
Kids. I mean, Khan Academy for Kids by far is the it's better than a fucking private tutor, but it's got the best guys in the world for that piece, and I think it's fucking still free. $20 is, might as well be free.
Yeah. Well, the thing too, if you're in, say, a business school and you're in finance or in macroeconomics, are you going to take the guy who can barely speak English all that seriously, or are you going to go listen to people that have experience working at big banks or the Federal Reserve or the Treasury or whatever their resume is, there's a lot of people out there that'll basically either be podcast guests or have their own podcasts and talk about a bunch of these different things. And I think that's where it'll be. I have a hard time seeing how long it takes, but I think the universities and the education system is basically going to go through a similar oh shit moment to the media.
Yes. You have to see the pendulum swing back from credentialism to, actual merit and value. And I have a fucking college degree. I've used it 0 times in my life. They gave me actually my ex-wife insisted I go get it at because all my institutions. It's fucking useless. Like, what do I even have? I don't even know where the fucking paper is. It's garbage. Most degrees are like that now too. I mean, 90% of what comes out of a university outside of engineering or a few,
or it's all just bullshit.
It's complete
made up bullshit. So here's one thing that does concern me, especially for our generation, Gen X. Mm-hmm. It's a little less for us, but very much for the boomer generation. Everybody shits on the boomers, but they actually know a lot of stuff, right? About a lot of things. We're losing all that knowledge.
Yeah, that's a big fucking problem.
They're not doing the channels. They're not doing they're not teaching. They're retired out, and they rightfully, earn their retirements. Most, not all, but most. And we're losing that. They're not going into teaching universities. They're not welcome there because they're not wokest enough, or they're not, or they don't have the credentials enough. Yeah. Never mind, they got 50 years in some subtle little field. And the problem is that the machines that we're using to teach the future generations were taught by 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in this transition of what we're doing, this goes back to the buying of the businesses and local businesses. There is a vast amount of knowledge transfer in the boomer generation that we're losing.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And I believe very fundamentally that more than any of the other concerns is going to make us a lot less effective, capable, we're going to easily lose 60% of the knowledge that we need to move forward in this ever more complex world. And there's no way the machines can compensate.
Well, the bad part about that is it's not just like business, and I think it's all the
social, human relationships.
Well, we see it in like engineering. Like I don't mean designing engineering. The guys
fundamental
shit together.
Yeah,
just we've seen several times. This is my local area has a lot of refineries, shit like that. They're having to call the guy out of retirement
at 80 years old.
Yeah, because nobody else knows what the fuck it is or how to do it. And that's a problem because that guy's going to die eventually.
When I was in New York working with the Buffett family, right, with the brain health and care stuff, I had a problem with the AC went out in the house.
Yeah.
And the owner had to bring somebody in. They brought a guy in. He was in his 40s or so. He had to call a guy who was 82 years old who had to climb up into the attic because he was the only one that could troubleshoot the AC system. And the AC system wasn't 80 years old, wasn't even 30 years old. But he was the only one that had that depth of knowledge to troubleshoot this AC system. And he worked it out in 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think,
but he would barely make it up the bloody ladder.
Yeah. Wow. If not fall off eventually. But that's one of the things where I think it is actually a huge problem with the way education and some of these things are set up to funnel people into very specific, very narrow.
Yeah, over specialization.
Having a broad view of, okay, here's some experience working on cars, experience building stuff. Like if you go down and basically tear it down to the roots and start an education system, it would be, you'd want kids to learn how to build stuff, fight, be in shape, play sports.
That's how they do it at the best private academies there are, right?
Oh yeah.
We're the one Bill Gates' kids went to over Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not Montessori's the other one. Yeah, they build go-karts and they don't fucking memorization history books and nonsense. This shit doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's the thing is if you're starting from scratch and you're building a homeschool program, it would be, okay, I want my kids to be able to build a chair, build a table, basic stuff, hammer and nail, and that obviously will scale up.
Our friend Tucker, that's what they did, right? They got for his kids and in the small community, I think they got 4 or 5 families together, and they got a curriculum, and then the parents switch out of who can teach when, And then it's a lot of it's life skills out on the farms, their little local farms, etc.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what they do. And it's, and that's the way it used to be, right? Before we centralize everything and optimize everything.
Well, it's also funny because not even that long ago we were actually good at this. I remember talking to my sister one time. She's a dual electrical mechanical engineer. She was doing shit in the Air Force, fucking higher level clearance than I'll ever fucking have. But I asked her when she was back getting her master's. It's like, wow, the Chinese are kicking our ass in these test scores, the Japanese or whoever.
No, they just cheat.
No, it's not even that. They're fantastic at rote memorization.
Yeah.
So really where you see it, though, is when you get to master's and doctorate programs, we start stomping their asses because they've never been taught how to think.
With innovation.
That used to be the difference between Eastern and Western education. They can absolutely destroy us at,
memory,
fucking
memory,
mathematical tables. They didn't know how to think and create their way out of a fucking problem, though. I see that as part of the specialization problem we have now. We've basically switched to that model.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same
that's
thing.
My experience from UW talking.
Same thing that happened.
How to cheat. That's why I saw. That's why I saw you.
Same thing that happened with the Special Forces Regiment. We became a regiment. We became a branch. It used to be guys had to figure out complex ways to solve complex things just to get missions and funding and et cetera. And you had to have a very broad spectrum of understanding geopolitically, operationally, military, state. Now we're over specialized. I mean, we still do cross training and all of that, but it's this skill set and this skill set. And this only happened in 1987. So I think it was 87, right? Became a regiment.
When they started, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, even in our own special operations world, we're seeing this. And it's not to say there isn't great guys and there isn't guys that do lots of great stuff, but it used to be like some of the old warrants and stuff. Holy cow, the breadth of knowledge and experience that guy had, or some old guy had been a major for 10 years, right? Or a 20-year E7.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you see it even down to like high school age sports, where most kids basically will only have time to play one sport, maybe two.
Yeah.
When
used to be 3 or 4.
40, 50 years ago, it's like you had one sport a season, basically.
Yeah, I did track and I did skiing and I did football. And most of the guys I knew did at least 3 sports.
This is part of like parents out too trying to push this, especially like at some point you got to know that your kid's not going to the NFL. So maybe we should stop fucking worrying about that.
Yeah, overachieve. Yeah.
But there's so many of them want this. I call it the rap dream. They want the one in 10 million shot. That kid's that's the only thing he's going to do. I mean, that's something we need to break away from too. I
think that's the the last 200-year cycle has been all this atomization of everything so that we can understand things. I do believe the next 200-year, 400-year cycle, and maybe that goes back 400, 1600s or whatever. I do believe that the next 400-year cycle is going to be reintegration, all this stuff back into whole. It's the only thing that works. AI is failing. We're going to hit because it's not real. It's artificial. It's, it's a construct.
Fake and gay.
So fake and gay and retarded. Let's get all the words in there. So I do believe that, we're going to see more of a return to local and small, return to integration there because we have to, because these big things have failed us and the big things are less and less available. And we will start to see, as Dr. Ian McGilchrist talks about, right hemisphere versus left hemisphere. We're going to start seeing a lot more integration, and it's starting with your generation. Like I'm already seeing, like my own, Gen Z child, they're pulling away from a lot of this stuff. They're not even talking about college. Some of them are, but they're not sure. And it's nothing like when I was that age, and I don't know about your age, but, I'm watching Gen Z and they're pulling away. They're doing more traditional gender roles. Like like they were making fun of all that shit while it was happening. Right. It's like, the thing is that my daughter's 16. She's going to be 17 next month. She's seen more already than I saw when I was in my 40s.
Right.
Why?
Information.
Everything. Yeah. Right. And so they've seen this arc. They've watched reality TV and all that and found out, that was all gay and fake. And then they've watched the wokest stuff and they're like, I don't want to go down that pathway. And so they've already seen all of this kind of stuff. I have great confidence that we're going to go back, some of the things that, you might be concerned with and that we've been concerned with. The big thing I am really worried, though, and I'm going back to it, though, is this massive loss of knowledge from the boomer generation, the last of the silent, some of the older Xers. because the Gen Zs, your generation, younger millennials and the Gen Zs, man, that knowledge has got to get transferred. It's got to get, or we're literally going to be set back 30 years, 40 years and trying to relearn that stuff.
Unfortunately, I think we're already on that path. I don't think a lot of it can be transferred.
That may be true.
And learning how to do these things over again, it's funny.
May just be a cycle.
Well, people always ask, like, how do we, how does a dark age happen? It's like, I can see it right now. Like, if you killed off all the boomers, actually, if you killed off everybody over 50, we wouldn't have fucking streetlights in 2 weeks. We wouldn't have.
No, it's absolutely true.
It's gone. It's over.
It's absolutely true.
And even like the younger generation, your generation, it's maybe like 1 out of 100 that know how to use a hand tool, like a hammer or a fucking it's just not their fault. This is the age of no fathers. Certainly things got more complicated, so fathers were paid.
Well, it's an estrogen-rich world.
Yeah. I'll make more money, so I'll hire somebody to do it. And fucking kids play. It's not their fault, but it's just how it's shaken out.
Yeah.
Well, this brings up very much what you're saying. It's like, I don't think we're going to be able to get rid of many of these immigrants because they're the only ones with these kinds of skills.
Well, I think that's
spicy.
I think the thing with the
bad ones and the obviously bad ones and the ones that aren't contributing.
But they have the skills though, where they're going to duct tape my water main back together. I've fucking seen that too.
Okay, so a lot of them are 18 Bravos.
A lot of them are FDAs.
Or FDAs. Who worked with an 18 Bravo.
So here's the thing on the knowledge transfer thing that I'll get in, I think, before you switch to immigration. Because that's, like, I love to talk about finance and markets and all this other stuff. But none of that means jack shit if
can't feed
we're going to
yourself.
have a massive demographic change where, okay, you import the third world, become the third world, and, like, great. It doesn't matter what in 100 years. So the one thing I'll add on the knowledge transfers, I think there are certain things that are going to get lost, but on some level, I think it's unavoidable. I don't know if it is in the past the same scale as we might see right now with the boomers.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's,
and it's not just the U.S., right? That's it. Before World War II, different parts of the world aged in time to different places, but World War II brought them all, and the Cold War brought everybody on the same cycle. So yeah.
No, I think that is it is sort of unavoidable. Certain things will be lost. I don't know where that leads or how big it'll be, but that's one of those things where I think there is, like, a lot of things will change, and I think it's going to be a circus over the next 5-10 years. But one of the things that I'm hoping the Trump admin actually gets their act together on is immigration, because that's one where I think they would be surprised at how popular mass deportations would be.
Oh, fuck yes, me too.
It would be. I think people don't realize too what kind of chain reaction, positive effects it would have for people that have lived here forever, where real estate or
people always talk shit on this one about we won't have cheap labor anymore, and who will build the houses? Well, fucking white guys at $50 an hour. But you know what? They'll be done well. It'll be fucking craftsman shit. There'll be garbage shoved in the fucking wall between the drywall.
You always see like the joins and some of these.
It's like this place. This is a fairly nice place, but if you look real close, right? And it's fairly new. I mean, I don't think it's a decade old. They had to replace half the roof already.
Dude, I've been in recently like multi-million-dollar new build homes that are just.
It's like an 18 Charlie fresh out of the Charlie course.
Who made this garbage?
Yeah.
So there's a problem.
The materials are nice,
right?
But the way in which it's all put together is like, wait a second.
There will be backlash. I mean, you're not going to remove that many people without creating some problem and some gap also. And fuck them, we can't have a house built for 5 years while
So I'm going to put it a slightly different way, if I might, back to the markets. Yeah. All right. We do have a problem back to finance, down underneath everything, economics, demographics and economics drives everything, right? We thought we can get away from that. Turns out, no. Problem we have is that we have boomers that are aging out and we have social obligation contracts to them. Mm-hmm. Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars over the next 20 years, right? Really 100 trillion or so. That's just in the U.S. all of that is sustained by unfortunately, because it's all artificial, by the stock market valuations.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have at least enough of a base income to the underlying companies to then, derivative that up to the values that we're at right now. If you remove that underlying base economic input, rents, production, which is pretty much all being done, at least the growth is all being done by these immigrants, right or bad, boomers lose all of that retirement stuff for this huge cohort goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And you run into other problems. So I'm not saying that we got to keep them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are some deeper, fundamental structural issues that we need to pay attention to go way beyond the obvious. And primarily what that is that we have an entire generation that's aging out and we've got to pay their retirements. And there's a certain amount of, and there's other, bigger brain people than me in these types of things are way more knowledgeable talking about it. There's a haircut the boomers are going to have to take. It's just the way it is.
I'm sure they're excited about it.
And it's a major haircut. And there's a lot of them that can't afford it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, we talk about boomers and all of this. Well, it's actually only about 20% that really benefited from this boomer generation largesse. Everybody else did not.
Right, of course.
Right? And a lot of them have been impoverished since the 2020, et cetera. Right? Something like, I can't remember, 12% or 15% of people have slipped into poverty in just the last 10 years. Because technically we are really in an economic depression since 2012. And you want a prime example of that. When I was young, in my 40s, driving back and forth across the country, you would see all these RV parks. You'd rarely see anybody there except for certain times of seasons. And even then it would only be so much. Every one of these north, south, east, west, this whole country are full now with RVs. People living in vans. This whole van life thing didn't come out of because it's cool.
No, it did not. No.
It's because that's all they could afford.
Yeah,
houses are
right.
That's one of the things, though. I understand the arguments on.
So it's a catch-22 is what I'm getting at, right? Yeah,
is gonna basically be left holding the bag, and at a high level, we can argue who it should be, who it shouldn't be, or
you're all gonna have to share the load, right?
Or if it's gonna be some mix. But I think the big picture is that you can't have a functional society where you have the younger generations subsidizing the older for healthcare, retirement, Medicare, Medicaid, like Social Security, all that. And you can't have a average. What's that? I remember seeing something. It was either last week, a couple weeks ago, where like the first time home buyer average age now is like 38.
Yeah.
40,
yeah. Well,
which is just insane. And the average home buyer age is like 58.
Yeah.
So everyone's like shuffling.
Well, and look at marriage and so this is
one more thing. Yeah. One more thing is when you have all those things, like all these cross currents, there's no clean solution. Whatever happens is going to be.
There's one clean solution.
Some mess.
There is one clean solution. Dramatically at every level from cities up, dramatically, at least 50% cut government jobs and payrolls. Because the largest single income, revenue generating income asset for the United States government is student loans. It's right around $2 trillion. The largest single revenue asset of the United States government is student loans.
You got to be shitting me.
No, I'm dead serious.
No, the student loans are
roughly
on the government's balance sheet. I don't know.
It's $2 trillion and it's revenues. It's all revenue generated. There's no cost related to it. Okay? The problem that we have is that starting with younger Gen X, all millennials, and now Gen Z, although Gen Z is starting to check out of it, which is okay. People came out of college with debts equal to their mortgages that their parents used to have at the same age.
Of course, yeah.
So you got to make a choice. And oh, by the way, you can't bankrupt your way out of, you can't excuse, right?
Yep.
So the single largest revenue income asset of the federal government is student loans, when it should be houses, because you don't build equity. There's no way to build equity in anything with student loans. So that was all done on purpose to fund this growth of the government. The only way that this is going to get reset is that we have to reset the government.
Well, I think the
at every level, like 60%, the numbers, when you look at them, 60% of government needs to go away. NGOs need to go away. All of this artificial jobs needs to go away.
I hate to tell you that this only happened one way.
Yeah, that
Historically.
Yeah. I just
But
don't.
the point is that that's
I'm fine with that.
it's the only way, because you have to, for an economy to function, a financial economic,
$2 trillion.
yeah, it's $2 trillion.
I'm still over here
and growing,
like, taking a minute.
and growing because of penalties
yeah.
and interest, because people can't pay.
The last 5 years,
Still growing.
People have been,
And it's 8% or so on interest. The interest rate.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna go outside and throw up.
All right. So the thing is, the only way in which there's two things.
Liberal arts degree is the actual bond of the United States of America. That's why I took
It's what keeps the government going.
Fucking fantastic.
That's how the sausage is made.
Okay. And now the government can borrow, because who are the ones that hold that debt? It's banks.
Yeah.
Now it's the government that guarantees it, but it's the banks. Now the banks get to use that as leverage, 10, 20 to 1, to go make loans to their own, because their own are the only ones that can have the credit worthiness. So it isn't the boomers that have to pay. It isn't the Gen Z. No, it's government. Government has got to get dramatically downsized. This is why Elon is so pissed.
So here's one thing that I'll throw in,
because housing prices have to come. I'm terribly sorry, but housing prices have to come down dramatically so that people can afford them. Right. So that the debt has to get jubileed in some form or fashion. There's ways we can do it through service and other things, so that it's not just excused. But that has to happen because people younger people have to, at younger ages, when they come out of college, need to be able to buy assets that accumulate in value and create an asset value, right? Appreciating asset values. That's the only way the system goes. And right now, that's all gone into student loans for like 30 years.
Well, I think the short answer of what's going to happen is it's going to be inflation. Money printer is.
There's only so much they can do there.
There's going to be a limit, right?
There's only so much they can.
I know. I'm saying, but that's like you can't.
They're not going to do it, and here's why they're not going to do it. Now, we're going to get inflation in other ways, but they're not going to do it. And the reason they're not going to do it is because every time we print money, we financially back our enemies to fight us. That's how Europe gets financed, through the Eurodollar system, which we're breaking as fast as we can. But our enemies get funded by money printing to fight us. That's why Powell put interest, by the way, for anybody listening, the Fed doesn't set interest rates. The Fed agrees to an interest rate that it'll buy debt at, but the markets set interest rates. But it's why interest rates have stayed up.
Yeah.
That Eurodollar printing thing, that's one of the craziest fucking things I've ever learned. That's like, when it was fucking finally explained to me, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe this is fucking real life.
Listen to Jack Snyder on Eurodollar University. Yeah. He goes into it in immense detail.
It's pretty.
I think his name's Jack Snyder. Sorry.
Was it Jeff Snyder?
Jeff Snyder. Yeah.
When you go down the rabbit hole of stuff like that, and you learn like how it was started and the amounts compared to where it is today, it's just mind blowing. And
I went to public school for 12 years. We never heard any of this shit. Like,
on purpose. Yeah.
I think
I can tell you the capital of Nebraska is Omaha, though, so that's important. Okay, drive on.
Yeah. No, I do want to get into, you're mentioning how government changes happen and government cuts will happen, and it might be a little bit messy. The one detour I'll take is, I think the endowments, we were just talking about student loans. I think the endowments could, for a lot of universities, deal with the student loans, whether they guarantee them instead of federal government or some of those things.
The problem is those endowments are being used through NGOs to fight us, to bring about the liberal agenda. The other part is, even though they have a giant portfolio, that's not the thrown, as you know very well, it's not the capital that's thrown off that they can spend every year.
Yep. No, I know. But
now they could fund education, highest level education, a lot of research from all of that. But we have to go after all these NGOs that they're using to fund all this liberal, strategic warfare kind of stuff, which is why the big donors donate. They don't donate because it's my alma mater. No. It's because it's a way in which for them to fight their communist, Marxist, fascist, whatever takeover without, running up against campaign finance laws and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is frustrating, but I think the universities will be... They'll be in for some major changes in the next 5-10 years.
I don't think a lot of the universities are going to survive. I think we're going to see. I think we're probably going to see 4/5 of them go away.
Me too.
I think we're going to go back to state colleges, state universities, and most of these other schools, smaller schools, regional schools, are going to go away.
Yeah, or get rolled up into,
or get
some of the, because I think it'll be
some satellite program,
something to do with geography too, where certain cities can definitely support a college or university, but like the places that are often bumfuck nowhere.
Oh yeah.
You're like, no.
Oh, we got some interesting locations of colleges and universities here in Idaho, out in the middle of frickin' nowhere.
Yeah, us too.
Right?
Yeah. So I do want to get into where all this heads for government, because I've been of the opinion for, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 years, but really since 2020, that we are basically eventually going to end up with a monarchy or something similar where you get one guy in charge, and I'm still waiting for like the great man to show up, and I hope it happens.
It's not time yet.
I hope it happens in my lifetime. I think it will.
I believe
that'll be when I'm probably an old man, I would guess.
I don't think so. I think it happens in the next 15 years. We got to understand is
45 will seem old to me.
There you go. Oh God! Shut the hell up, dude. Shut up. It's like a junior on the team.
I don't even know which 40 number I turned this.
I didn't even know where I was at 45. Oh, actually, I was in the Q course, just finishing the Q course at 45. Yeah. I think that's coming. I mean, Clay and I have talked this numerous times. And I think that it happens in the next 15 years.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it shakes out.
Yeah.
I cannot see this clusterfuck that we have sustaining itself for more than that. And in 5 years, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think it's 3 to 5 years.
We're at a precipice right now where things could flip on a dime.
Yeah.
And start it's not that they just all end. It's that you start down these roads that can't be reversed.
Yes.
Then 5 years from now, we're in fucking Mad Max world, and
or we're in
the king of Nebraska is fucking sitting with his army, and you're like, oh fuck, like this is what we do now. This is how we end.
Yeah.
This is.
So I think what we have to look at is how Putin was put in power. He didn't raise himself. He didn't strongman him. He was put in power, and how Xi was put in power. And we have to look at those models, because what were those? Those were oligarchs making a decision. We've got to get rid of this parasitic, this Praetorian parasitic financialist kill chain system. And how we got to do it is we got to put a man in power and give him the power within bounds, right? Not absolute, but the word tyrant
has to be pretty close to absolute.
It's got to be pretty close, but
it can often look that way, but
it's not. Correct.
No,
correct.
But I'm
same thing we've done building networks of people in other countries, right? You give them what looks like. Now, does he have life and death choice decision power? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's structure into how he gets to make that decision and what the recompense is if he steps outside. Generally, somebody historically who's elevated to that level is elevated to that level for 3 reasons. One, they're incredibly competent at the social dynamics. 2, they're uncorruptible. They're not motivated by money, wealth, this artificial ball, right? The old god or whatever. They are motivated by power, and power is a separate thing. The third one is that they're elevated. They know how to arbitrate. They understand the power players in their network and elsewhere, and they know how to arbitrate between them.
There you go.
It's those 3 things. And if you look at Putin, he's been doing that extraordinarily well for 20 some odd years. Xi's been doing it for 13 years or so. If you look historically, the word tyrant or dictator, Roman and Greek, was an individual that was actually elevated to this level and given that power, like Syracuse, right?
Yeah.
Who was given that kind of total, absolute dictatorial power because the dynamics amongst power and the people and everything was so corrupted. There needed to be a strong man that came in and just like, okay, you're dead.
It's the only way to fix it.
You're in prison. You're impoverished, right? It has to happen at times. And that's what Putin and Xi are. And what Khomeini in Iran, in Iran, he didn't raise himself up there, the older one. So we're rapidly approaching that point. But before that, everything that's happening now has to happen. You got to try the courts. You got to go through the legal system. You've got to draw people out into the open to see who they're really aligned with and who's really all that stuff's got to happen. And we're not there yet. It's happening if you look. But I think it happens in the next 3 to 5 years by force, because Europe is collapsing much faster. The United Kingdom and Europe is collapsing much faster. And those estrogens over there, right, those old matrilineal lines, when I say estrogens, I mean literally those families are 900 years old and they're all women. The power that mother to daughter, they're collapsing faster than we are. And they will unleash hell here through all their networks and all their social financial and all these weave of connections. They'll unleash hell here to get us to keep paying for their life as we've been doing for the last 200 years. So I think it happens here in 3 to 5 years. It doesn't get to its fullness. Again, like Putin and Xi, their first years were not focused outwards at all. Their first years were all focused. Putin, for probably the first 8 years, 9 years, was heavily focused inside. For Xi, the first 3 to 5 years, 7 years, the same. It's all focused on getting rid of corruption, figuring out who's really working for who overseas, what bank, who's fraud. And China, they hung or killed, or I don't remember exactly how they do it, but they killed a bunch of people who were big CEOs and bankers and industrialists, and they were doing fraud and corruption.
Russia had nothing like that, except a bunch of guys kept falling out of windows.
Allegedly.
I understand now why Russians have a fear of heights. Don't forget, though, we've had people fall out of windows here, like the big LA guy, the big movie producer guy that was working with Epstein, et cetera, and he fell out of Capitol building. And so sudden heart attacks, car accidents, and falls from big heights.
Yeah.
It's kind of the go-tos.
Right.
I'm yet to see all three of them combined together. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Wait.
I got an idea for when the contracts come out. It's going to be art.
What was the one Hillary Clinton one where it's like death by suicide, like multiple gunshot wounds
to the back of the head?
Back of the head, yeah.
Well, that's the other thing, right? People don't realize that, look at the death count around the Clintons. They didn't have anything to do that. People keeping in power do. Right?
Right.
People keeping in power do. Well, that's who you're up against. The people that we're up against that we have to remove are the ones that have been doing the Clinton body count. And they're our own. And like Clay and I have talked about before, if they want to come after somebody like us and they can't get some random to kind of do it, they're going to send somebody we know, somebody we worked with. They're going to have a conversation. And if I'm not paying attention and I'm not careful, and I'll commit suicide. Right? But this is who we're up against. This is what we're dealing with. Forget all the other, they're the influencers, et cetera. And at some point here, right, the elites now, since they try to kill Trump on live TV, realize, no, the Kennedying ain't over. Right?
Right.
So what does it do? It gets those folks into a way. Now, we're still dealing with, they still think they can use the system. They can still vote their way out of it. They can still buy their way out of it, that they can still buy everything that they need. They can somehow restore the social obligation contract, which, back to the beginning of the conversation, I don't know how the fuck you do that with this whole Epstein bullshit that keeps coming back up. And it's like, make up a list.
No shit.
Just make up a list.
Fuck, you tell them we don't have a
people that people don't like, and then just put that shit out there, lop off some fucking heads, restore the social contract.
Like we've never made a fucking list before. There was bullshit lies.
Right?
We got a guy for that, right?
What was the Warren report?
Yeah.
Get the French to do it for us. I don't give a fuck. Just hire somebody.
Get the British. They're pretty good at making shit up.
They got 5 versions right now. Like, which one do you want? Who do you just like?
Yeah, as long as what's his name, Schumer, as long as that guy's on it.
Yeah, right. They're making deals like Pokemon cards.
You're looking at it.
Schumer's in, but that means that he's like
And then you find out that everybody on it's got some terminal disease and they're dead in a year anyways.
Right. Like the trading cards of politicians. Oh man.
Well, we can do like an online Hunger Games voting kind of system.
There you go.
Right? Who do you want on the list?
Right.
Well, Schumer, top, Pelosi, Gavin Newsom.
It's
Microsoft Word.
It's Hunger Games plus sports betting equals
the new Poly market, right?
The new Epstein list.
This actually brings me to a point. Like, God damn it, this is how you can tell Trump's not gangster enough. He should have made up a fucking list of people he didn't like. Sacrifice a couple of your friends too. You have to. That's how this game's fucking played. But it was Obama, Michelle Obama. Just fucking anybody you need to get rid of. Yeah, Big Mike, fucking Nancy Pelosi, fucking somehow, whoever you need. Would have been smart. Would have been a good play.
So you think
Lost opportunity?
Yeah. So you think it's 5 years too on the government, or you think?
Man,
the one devil's advocate point I'll make is a system like we have has a lot of inertia built up behind it.
Yeah. I'm going to say somewhere in the next 10 minutes, the next 10 years, but I think so. Just because
that's narrowing it down.
I've been surprised before. I've been surprised by how far they can keep the economy going. Like, I've really been shocked that we've even lasted the last 5 years. Like, we are held together with like duct tape and fucking paper mache.
It's like an Afghan Bravo, like you brought up earlier.
Fucking turbine for an engine, prime dry belt engine. We have kept going. It is catching up to us now, though. Really, these last 2 years, I think, have been just brutal on like normal working people. They are fucking hard.
Well, they can't hide the economic depression anymore.
Right.
Well, the inflation that people, I think, have started to really feel is, okay, is this going to go away, or is this going to be a repeat of the 70s where you get inflationary decade, there's lulls, and there's highs and lows basically, but
there's a difference though now. Again, it goes back to the RV parks being filled. It's not just RV parks. I mean, I drive home to California. People are parked out on all the beaches. There's in San Francisco, I know people I've known for 10, 15 years. People, now most of them are gone now.
You go to certain streets in Boise right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It won't move anymore.
I know a guy running for office who's homeless.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's fucking amazing.
And he should, I mean, but in San Francisco, where I come from, I know guys that are making $150,000, $200,000 a year and they live in the car because they can't afford a place and they got to pay student loans.
That's fucking crazy.
And it's not exaggeration. And it's not a few.
Yeah.
Right. So, with the brain injuries, I became homeless, not on the street kind of homeless, but some nights in my car, et cetera.
Yeah.
And you get to see things at a level you just pass by every day and you don't even think about, you don't recognize. And then I, drove back and forth cross country to get treatments and all of that kind of stuff for a 4-year period. It took about 2 to really start to get my life recovered. And I saw all these things all over this country, north, south, east, west, in the cities, out in the rural areas. The difference in the 70s, which I lived through, right, and was old enough to remember them, is that there isn't enough home ownership, asset building participation now as there was in the 70s. Not even close. So the folks in the 70s could ride out the hyperinflation. They could ride out the slowing down of asset value appreciations, but they had assets and they were participating. The problem is that we have now is we're in an economic depression. They can't hide it anymore. The modern tent cities of the Great Depression are the RVs. We have nicer tents now.
We've definitely scaled up on that. Yes.
We scaled up, right? It's very nice of them to help us, the masters.
Thanks,
Yeah, that we can mobile our tent, but it's the equivalent. And so that's where it's very different from the 70s.
But yeah, I mean, I just think that this has to come apart. The wheels have to come off it. You're already seeing the violence escalate too. I mean, that's a big indicator. We're not quite as bad as it was in the 70s yet either, but we are seeing shit start to get to that point. The ambush of the guys yesterday at the ICE depot in Texas.
Yeah. Confidence targets.
Yeah, you're starting to see this kind of shit, and you also look at how brainwashed, actually both sides of the country are, but for different reasons. I just feel like we're at that point where it has to come to fucking violence. It just does. And
It's like it's very much like an infection in the body. And the infection has reached such a prolificness in the body that the immune system has to go to war with it, even knowing that it might kill the host. And we're at that point. And we've been trying all these antivirals, and we've been doing, it's just, you know, there is a fight coming, and there historically it has never, ever, 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 ever gotten this way in all the thousands of years of history that we know, that it hasn't gone to blood. Now, the thought was, and this is what they've been pushing for, is it doesn't always have to be blood inside. It can be outwards, right? Blow this out. But blowing this out is World War III. It's nuclear, and it's over in 72 fucking minutes. And so our elites are like, we're not going to, you know, the ones that are in and really moving is like, no. The question becomes one of this. And I had this conversation with somebody the other day. Trump was put into office not to take us to World War III. Trump was put into office to make the decision, do we go to world? No. Trump was put into office to make the decision, do we go to civil war, not to prevent going to World War III. And I don't know the answer. And maybe it's not in Trump's time. Maybe it's who his successor is. But that's really the decision before us right now, because we're not going to get World War III. We are intentionally disarming ourselves around the world. That's what the Ukraine war was. That's what this whole Iran thing is. Now we're talking, you know, kerfluffle with China. What are we going to do? We're going to disarm our clandestine covert operations, our martial capabilities in South, Southeast, and East Asia. That's coming next. And what is it? When the empire pulls back to deal with the empire, and this is also historical stuff, it has to burn all that stuff out there so it can't be used to come after the heart of the empire. You also have to make, you know, what was the B-2 bombings? We need to let those others out there that might decide while we're dealing with the house, right? When we're dealing with the family, to come after us. And it's like, no, we can still reach you. And there's nothing you can do about it, right? Maybe we can't wage a war against you, but we can hurt you. Yeah. And that's what's happening.
Well, that's the thing. Didn't they take some the B-2s off from Missouri?
Yeah.
37.
Yeah, where everybody could see it on satellite and everything. It's like, okay, you can see it, but yeah.
Do something better, Chief.
Yeah.
It's like the big dude in the bar who's finally had enough, and he just gets up. He lets everybody watch him. He walks across real slowly and knocks the guy out with a punch. And then he goes and sits back down, has a drink.
It's $5 trillion in R&D, motherfucker.
Right?
This happens.
We got to make that shit. That's the other thing, right? Is that one of the things that we've learned in the Ukraine war is that most of our high-end technologies don't work. Not in a real peer-on-peer war. That those B-2s aren't going. Maybe you're going to get some strikes, and then they're taken out. They're done. Right. A carrier group, you can use one Orezhnik, and you could take out an entire carrier group.
Carrier groups are a joke against peers. I mean, they were built to beat up third world people that don't have a fucking air force. That's what they're for. People don't realize that. But
and they still beat us in war because they just outlasted us.
Right. I mean, like Somalia, shit. Like, we drive a carrier.
Yeah.
You're not fighting a war. That's the submarine corps.
It's
nothing to do with your.
Correct. Yeah, correct. That's the only real
shipping lanes and look good on.
Well, you can use hypersonics now. You can use sub-based hypersonics. You can use we can't. They can.
Well,
right?
Here's a question for you on the technology side. One of the things that I find interesting is how fast and how far ahead, and you just look back at the 70s, like some of the military technology was, where I think there was a picture of, I think it was in 1968, of the SR-71, the Blackbird or whatever.
Beautiful.
Which is one of the coolest, I think, machines ever built. And then side by side with like a 68 Mustang, which is basically the caveman playing with fire by comparison.
Right. Yeah.
So like what kind of technologies do you
We're
guys
back to
think?
Mustangs.
Bro, we've had a lot of DEI hires in the last 30 years.
I know, but I'm saying in the deep dark holes that no one knows about.
No.
I've only been surprised once in the entire GWAT, and that was by the airframe that they hit Bin Laden with. Because I was standing there with
the helicopter.
Yeah, the helicopter.
Yeah. Stealth helicopter.
Bullshit. Like, that doesn't exist. And then like 2 days later, like, fuck, that does exist. That is
And
the only time, though, in that entire war that I've been surprised by what we actually.
we also may or may not have left that behind on purpose to create a signature that we got to. I'll tell you from doing my doctoral studies later in life, right? PhD engineering studies, 90% of the technology, fundamental technologies in science that we have peaked in the 1960s, and we haven't invented scientifically. And there's a reason for that. We were intentionally taking down the wrong path of physics with string theory. We've been chasing mathematics and not fundamental physics for 80 years, 60 years. And it was done on purpose so that our enemies, quote unquote, our enemies couldn't get an advantage over us, or we couldn't invent anything that would take the regime down. The problem is that the last time we did fundamental science and engineering in the United States and in Europe and the United Kingdom was over 60 years ago. And now 40% of our engineers and scientists are foreign. It's even higher now. And in some areas, we are not, so people talk about Chinese stealing our technology. It's like, you do realize that something like 40% of our scientists are Chinese, and 40% of our engineers, or 30% of our engineers are Chinese. Well, the Russians are stealing our technology. They're using the washing machines and pulling chips out. It's like, motherfucker, the best electrical engineers in the entire world are all Russians from Russia, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, so they're stealing our shit. I'll give you an example of, how far off we are. We spent all this money and all this stuff with technologies and sciences that are over 60 years old. Russia comes out with the Orezhnik. We only see one. And anybody has any, Steve Postel or Dr. Postel and others have talked this way better than I can. But anybody's honest, and it's like a BDA, battle damage assessment kind of guy, was like, holy shit, that just changed everything. Why didn't we know about that? Why don't we have hypersonics? Right? So this whole, diversity hire, et cetera stuff has been going on for a lot longer than the whole wokeist thing. We've been over-relying on technology and sciences that we're creating. Well, no, we're not. Foreigners are doing that here. Mm-hmm. And most everything that we're using here in the United States, because everything's controlled by DARPA, NIH, NSF, 90%, 95% of all funding, 99% of all funding comes from the government. Everything's been on a list. I just did my doctoral studies 10 years ago. I started them 10 years ago. That's the reality of it. We don't have technical superiority. We did 30 years ago.
We spent a lot. What was it? It was George W. When he first came into office, that was his mandate, was to fix our missiles.
Yeah.
Missile defense and missile offense. Well, fucking 9/11 happened, and now we got to go basically fight retards in the desert, fucking AK-47 for 20 years. We spent an ass load of money. The bigger problem, though, is we missed 20 years of development of shit that we already knew we were behind in.
Yeah.
Big boy toys that you use to fight real people, not, fucking idiots.
You ever wonder why we didn't take on Russia? If we were so big and badass, why didn't we take on Russia? Now I'll give you, directly, okay, we need resources. Okay, I'll give you another example. In the Ukrainian war, why haven't we used air power?
That's an interesting question, because we fucking lose it.
Because there's no way that Ukrainians could ever win without air power. And we're supposed to have this massive air superiority. Why didn't we use it? Didn't want to lose an aircraft.
Yeah, people frown on that.
Right? Why didn't we use some of our other capabilities? Targeted energy weapons, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work the way we say it does, and it has counters. And they've been focusing on the counters. We've been focusing on this overly expensive, hyped up shit.
Science projects.
That's like in the IEDs.
Yeah.
Right? So we had jammers. Okay. What'd they do? They had a cell phone. They had a two-part initiation, right, or trigger. One's connected to something radio frequency, and they would have a spotter somewhere, and they would watch you coming, activate that, knowing your jammer's going to come in, and then they got a pressure plate. Easy. The whole thing cost them maybe $30. Meanwhile, I got a Mat V that's $4 million
right.
with a freaking Jake system on it,
right.
and and I got some RG-33. I probably got $15 million worth of equipment. It was just all freaking undone with a $35.
We just saw this with the fucking Houthi drones too, that are 10
correct
piece,
correct,
overwhelming our Aegis.
Correct.
Yeah, like Well, fuck. Turns out that you can't throw enough rocks at somebody that their fucking vest breaks. It works like that. The ceramic plates are not fucking built by God. It's
yeah. It's not Iron Man.
Right. even enough rocks, like fuck it.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are problems. I don't think people realize how badly fucked up our strategic thinking has been for a long time. We've had a lot of idiots in charge.
It's just been a scam. It's been a grift for, and Eisenhower tried to warn us. Yeah, right? And Eisenhower had two warnings. One was the military industrial complex. The other one was the military innovation complex. And the innovation complex one is the one he worried about for this very reason. Because innovations would be sidelined, science would be sidelined, and all we'd do is these big fancy projects that would, cost a bunch of money, but weren't truly innovative at all. Now, I'm going to give you another thing back to the resetting a government thing and what might come here. Is one of the things that's happening is that a lot of the reason why people were reticent to rise up against the government is because they thought it had this overwhelming technical superiority. We just lost to people who wear sandals and live in mud huts.
Again.
In the middle of winter, in the Hindu Kush. Right? And it's like, and then, we see these strikes and these other things. It's like people are starting to wake up to maybe we don't have military superiority. Maybe they don't have all these capabilities. Maybe these things are easily defeated. It's kind of a dumb thing for a regime to do when it's on its legs, right? Its hind legs.
Well, that's the other thing, too, is you have all these different things with supply chains, whether it's rare earth metals from China, and they have all their refining capacity, and that's a critical component for whatever
everything.
Tomahawk missile.
Yeah.
Some plane, basically go down the list.
Yeah. How about lead and gunpowder? We don't have a hell of a lot of that either.
Oh, what about primers for bullets that are made in two places in the world, Turkey and freaking India mostly?
Actually, they're made in two places in the United States, Idaho
and Montana now too.
Montana.
And Alberta is bringing them on. But point being is the major production for these things. Yeah. And certain propellants and other things.
You can't make them here because of OSHA. OSHA and EPA.
EPA,
So we've outsourced this year like 30. And I wish we could.
Or we could make the final composite, but you can't get the subcomponent, the materials because they're toxic under some freaking list.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or we can't use our own oil in the United States with our own refineries because it's not the right grade of oil. And to rebuild those refineries is going to take you 20 years. And so we send our oil overseas to get refined to be sold back to us. And we buy oil from other parts of the world like Saudi Arabia, et cetera. It's the right that we can refine.
Yeah. I think the thing that's interesting with all these supply chain things, I'm not naive enough to think that the U.S. can have this closed loop economy where every single piece comes from inside the U.S. But should the last refiner the U.S. built be come online in 2000 or something, or whatever it is, it's been decades, right? Probably not. Should we have military components that we can't build ourselves? No.
At some point with the strategic view of things, you have to say, we're going to this is going to be a lost leader, but we're going to have the fucking tank factory and some oil and, some other bullshit. When you lose sight of that, when you really become the globalist, we'll just buy everything from fucking, that's
when
great.
When you become a consensus-based, consensus-based, estrogen-based society, consensus-based, that has no comprehension of what actual security and protection requires from the smallest level up. Now you've shifted from a century of war, or 60, 80 years of war, starting in the 1800s into 1940s, and you shift to more social things, right? The war to end all wars. Really?
Right. How'd that work out?
Really? So we should be able to get rid of our police departments and send them home because we're all at peace here. So, it doesn't even work on the local level.
I don't think we have a high trust society to do that.
We don't.
We could have. But
the problem is incentive structures, right? The incentive structures have been wrong over the last 60 years. The incentive structures haven't been towards security, safety, protection, and then the second and third order benefits of that. The order of priority has been keep everybody out there, keep the fight out there, and then do all this social stuff at home. Invest in, and it's not just manufacturing capacities that are a problem. Look at our infrastructure.
Whoa,
Look at bridges. Look at dams. Look at water spillways. Look at So there's forest forest and wildland management, etc. We've let all of it go because we wanted to take care of everybody and we wanted to be nice. Well, it doesn't work. And well, it works right up until it doesn't, and then it all collapses. I don't think we're going for a collapse. Possible. I don't think we're going for a collapse. Quite honestly, we do still have the boomers. We do still have Gen Xers who've been in, we've been in the old world and the new world. We do have very well-educated millennials that, if they were oriented right, really could do a bunch of things.
Well, they're easily motivated if they can actually have some shit and a piece of the drink.
Correct. Correct. If they can... Yeah, if they can earn something that they can build from all this effort they put in, and they're communal, they're a communal generation.
If there's a little piece of gold at the end of the rainbow, you wouldn't have any.
Exactly. Well, if they can, if they can step out of their metaverse and their shit coins and actually build real assets,
they'd be totally motivated.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're. I don't shit on the millennials either, right? They came up in a time and place.
I can see why they are the way that they are, because they have gotten fucked.
They have. Well, and since they were young, they've been blamed for all kinds of shit. And it was like, they're 5 fucking years old. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah.
No, that's the funny thing. I remember I was having some back and forth. I think this was the last time I did a back and forth with anyone who at least claimed to be a boomer. They're like, oh, well, you should have just bought a house in 2010. I was like, what, when I was fucking 15?
Right, yeah. Fucking lawns.
Yeah. That's another problem, right? They think this wealth transfer that's going to happen is going to, fix this problem, that there's going to be this massive wealth transfer from boomers to millennials and Gen Z. It's not going to happen. And it's certainly not going to happen the way in which they're, thinking of it.
You have to mark to market eventually.
Well, even if they were able to do most of it without, inheritance taxes and death taxes and all this other shit, and just gift taxes, etc., a vast majority of the people inheriting would have to sell everything to pay the fucking debts that they've got. And who are they going to sell to? Right? There's going to be some cross-selling, etc. But the problem is, when you have $2 trillion and growing in student loan debt, that's a $2 trillion hole right there.
Fucking sleep on it, talk to Jesus, have a minute to fucking absorb this shit. Holy fuck.
And it was $2 trillion. Okay, so you weren't able to build a physical asset with home ownership and appreciation. Maybe you had a skill base that you can... No, they were educated on shit too.
Yeah, the cat's trying to unplug the camera. Brought to you by...
Come here.
Brought to you by...
This is blue.
To me, that actually just summed up our entire technology-based
right?
And all this shit. And my
cat's gonna bite the cable, and it's all done.
It's all over. Nobody knows how to put the fucking extension cord on the fucking toast.
I do have electrical tape, and I was an Echo like you, so we could probably fix it. Yeah. But I don't know how to put the fire out that started by it. Yeah. So I don't think we're going to collapse. I think we have all the pieces. One of the things that we have is we have defensible borders. Yeah. Now, maybe what we got to do is we got to take parts of Canada. Easy. That's a weekend with a couple of the boys.
With this.
And they'll probably come out and, all right, let's do this, right?
They have really nice shit like oil and grass.
Right? Skiing, caribou, moose.
Sing Hortons now.
Yeah, right. Sing Hortons.
I was talking to one guy from Canada. He was just ranting and raving. I'm like, dude, I grew up in a Microsoft suburb. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh yeah. Dude, it's ugly up there. It's hideous right now.
Yeah.
What is?
Canada.
Canada is like the same Indian.
No, they've been totally infiltrated, etc. They got to get rid of a lot of people. The one that I do think we're going to have a real slog and fight on, and there might be plans for that, is Mexico. I do think what might wind up happening because of the defensibility, the threat vector, is that we go back and revisit the American-Mexican, the Mexican-American War, and we take the rest of Mexico. And then now we've got the little narrow isthmus down there that we got to secure. and we're much more secure. And oh, by the way, 40 to 60% of our populations here are Hispanic anyways. That's not changing. They're having kids. They're the demographic of the future, at least in the West.
Mexico's got a lot of oil, and
they got oil. They've got
nice beaches.
Latinas.
Those probably help some of you guys.
Yeah, no. So I don't know exactly there, but that does, my suspicion is that as the United States pulls back and looks to, more than Monroe kind of thing, securing the actual border, we could do it, but it's just way easier to.
Turns out.
Just way easier. All the way down to Panama Canal, right?
Well, that's the thing, is if that is the route we take, they better build a wall that's like 1,000 fucking feet high and just sea to sea. All right, that's it. No one else comes in. Learn our
That's much easier. We just mined the southern edge of the Panama Canal. Yeah. We just and we have like shows like Running Man shows, right? You want to get through? If you can get through, we'll make you a citizen. Drones and what was Babylon AD with Vin Diesel, and they had the killer drones.
Yeah.
That's
a fun classic.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we're going to see some of these. The Nothing Ever Happens bros are like they should.
It's already been a rough 2025.
Well, the shit that Trump was talking about though that seemed fucking crazy isn't that crazy. Like taking Greenland, annexing Greenland.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah, look at the new Northwest Passage.
Yeah.
I mean, this seems fucking insane if you're my age even and you've grown up this very stable.
Yeah.
Borders don't change.
The interregnum.
For 40 years. But I think we're right on the cusp of some crazy fucking shits.
Well, Tom and I talked this. I believe very fundamentally we're walling Europe off to let it deal with its collapse.
And we should.
And we don't want it to wash over and flush over on us.
Make it a giant prison.
Escape from Europe. Be like a reversed Iron Curtain.
I mean, they've been our enemy for 200 years. Fuck them. Maybe we should finally, recognize that. They've
been our enemy, the English-speaking people's enemy for thousands of years. So let's just own it. No, I think we have everything. We've got the knowledge. We've got the experience. We're going to get over this whole AI bullshit pretty quick. There's already, like big voices who are big knowledge guys in AI. They're all saying this is all bullshit, and it's out on YouTube and, not being censored, et cetera. So, the wealth destruction, the artificial wealth destruction for the elites is going to be an issue because it's going to wipe out, just like the .coms did, $2 trillion of market valuation. And that's, boomers' retirement and et cetera. And the other thing is that people don't realize is that it's not just boomer retirement. Boomer retirement is spending that goes into the economy that pays local tax bases.
I think those boomers just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They'll be fine.
Go buy a house.
Yeah. Buy a house. Bootstraps.
I think one of the things that could happen here with the boomers, and one of the things we should support if it comes out of government, et cetera, is there are some modifications to inheritance laws, tax laws, et cetera. There's a lot of things that we could do to make this wealth transition actually happen and happen in a positive, beneficial, constructive way that doesn't destroy wealth, isn't required for these asset portfolios. Because that's the other thing. It's not just the houses, it's their retirement portfolios and these other assets that, if we were able to sustain those and pass those forward to the next generations, would help keep the system capitalized. But as it is right now, the next 2.5 generations are so broke and increasingly becoming more broke that we're going to have to cash most of the boomers' assets out. And who's going to buy it? Europe's bankrupt. The Russians, the Chinese, the, Central Asians, some of the African nations are coming out. You see that Niger and Burkina Faso and some other countries formed a new alliance in Africa.
No, it is.
They like 4 countries folded together into a single republic.
Wow, that's wild.
It's amazing what happens when you get rid of the fucking French.
Yeah. Most everything's positive.
Poor Eastern Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm curious to see how it all shakes out with the way, like you said, assets get transferred, but also what happens to financial markets, what happens to economies, all these different things. Because I kind of have a hard time seeing how we get through this without someone basically getting completely wiped. And
Well,
in the past, it's going
to be BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street are going to get clobbered.
That's the thing is all this passive investing stuff. I don't know how
hedge funds, private equity. So everything that was created by artificial liquidity, right? Unearned liquidity is what I call it, which is all this cheap money printed shit, zero interest bound kind of stuff or negative interest really. All of that has to get wiped out. Problem is it has to be done. You can't do it all at once. You got to do it in stages. You got to be careful. You got to let the banks rebalance, right? What needs to happen is we need to go back, and SOFR made that possible. We can now do regional banking again, regional and local banking. The problem is that in order for regional local banking to work, they have to have really substantive market analysis in the local regional economies. And this country's huge, and we do have regional economies that are fundamentally different,
Right.
and sub-regional economies that are fundamentally different, even though they might be tied into the larger region.
Yep.
All of that knowledge, all of that experience we used to have 40, 50, 60 years ago, before we went to all this cheap money and all the big, Goldman Sachs kind of investing, et cetera. So some of those old timers are still here. Warren Buffett's still here. He's trying to do all of that with a big portfolio and knowledge, et cetera. So there's a transition period where, yes, the financialists and all this unearned liquidity gets wiped out, but the local and regional banks pick up the slack of that in the form of lending, et cetera, using localized market intelligence. That's the conversation you and I have had, right?
Yeah.
Like if I was an investor, a high net worth family right now, there's two things I would focus on. One, my actual safety and security, right? that I can't get from government, law enforcement, military. I've got to be able to do this myself in a way that Americans haven't had to do for 100 plus years in the West, and in the East, maybe 200 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to be able to do that. And that means relationships with people in the community. I can't do this, I'm just going to get in my plane and leave because, the Red Dawn people showed us that they'll just blow your plane up. Right. Or you got supplies, as you said in a conversation. Right.
Yeah.
So I would focus on my security and safety and that of my family and my assets. And that ties into the next one, which is if I was a younger person like your generation, I've talked to my daughter and her boyfriend. It's like, don't go to college. It's a waste of time. I'll go buy, I'll work with a friend of mine. I've actually referenced you. I was like, I'm going to go work with Ben. We're going to put a private equity fund together here locally, and we're going to buy businesses, going ventures, skill set, and then keep the older person around to do the knowledge transfer for 3 to 5 years as they get paid out of, bought out through revenues and growth. So we got the skill transfer. We got the asset transfer. Local banks can help lend to that with local market and business intelligence. And we could do this. It's going to be a 5, 8 year, 10-year kind of reset and rebalance. And a lot of these, half of Elon's wealth to 4/5 of Elon's wealth is going to disappear. We're going to go back to maybe 5 billionaires instead of the 300 or something that we have, because that's all artificial paper money. And a lot of these centimillionaires are going to be decamillionaires. A lot of the decamillionaires are going to be millionaires. And a lot of the millionaires are going to go back to not being millionaires. But that's okay. It's not like they're getting, totally wiped out. Right. Now their overextension is going to get wiped out. But all of this unearned liquidity that we've been pumping in the system since 1971, 60% of that at least, if not 80%, has to go away.
Yeah, the thing that is interesting, I was listening to,
and it'll get violent.
Yeah, that usually gets
people don't give shit like that up easy.
Yeah. No, even if it's collapsing all around them, they'll fight. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and to add on to what you're saying about the liquidity stuff and Vanguard and BlackRock and those guys, apparently every dollar of money that is invested passively, like the mindless robot, basically creates, I think he said, between $17 and $20 of
correct
market capitalization.
Yeah.
Right, when you look at how much money flows in just from 401k funds every 2 weeks, just on autopilot, there's no one in the entire decision chain, because most of the jobs have setups where it's automatic opt-in,
Yeah.
opt-out.
Yeah.
And so,
Or you have to change your allocation, and most people don't even know how to do that.
That's the thing. Is so there's so much money where just every 2 weeks, whenever they get paid, just flowing in, and from the start to the finish, there's not a single decision made on, is this asset worth what I'm paying for?
Yeah.
It's
Well, most people don't even know what the hell their money's going into. They don't know what assets or asset classes or any of it.
Just a ticker on a screen.
So most of that's going to go away. We're going to go back to, fundamentals, banking fundamentals. And we've been off bank. I watched it happen in the late 90s with the 94 Banking Deregulation Act. And then that played out. And yes, we benefited from it. We built the first online consumer credit company, NextCard, using that. Had to buy a bank. But we've watched this. I've watched in my own lifetime in the industries. I've watched us go from banking fundamentals to financialism, just pure, absolutely exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
This mindless, just money, print the money, create a crisis, print the money, and then the money just pours into things. That era is over.
To manufacture more money.
And it's all right. So I remember somebody laid out, and again, Jeff Snyder's a great one to, way more knowledgeable than I'll ever be. Richard Gannon, Rebel Capitalist, is another great one. We're at something like 700 layers of derivatives right now.
Well, that's fucking spicy, isn't it?
You get above 12, 13, derivatives are real and they have a value, et cetera. But you get above 30, I don't remember what it is, something like 14 or 17 derivatives on, a single dollar coming in. That's all vaporware above that.
Right.
There's no reality, no business fundamentals, no financial fun. It's just make believe.
I mean, even as somebody that's relatively financially ignorant, well, fucking obviously, there's only so many of these things you can fucking do. The 700 is crazy.
Something like 700 layers of derivatives or 700 different forms of derivatives. Wow. So what it means is that something like 80% of the growth of our economy and wealth since 1971 is fake. All the way back to 1971. So, and we've been already half of our GDP is fake. Mm-hmm. Because we're counting expenses that you shouldn't add. So like healthcare should not be could be additive. The 5 trillion or so in healthcare should not actually be on GDP numbers because that's an expense.
Right.
Right. You're taking that 5 trillion away from other things that you can invest in.
Right.
But we count it as GDP. Financialism, money made off of money. Fees, banking fees, financialist fees made off of money. That's an expense. That's not GDP. It's not going into creating revenue. GDP is supposed to only measure, things that grow in asset value, that create asset value, not all this stuff that we're spending on this expense side. It's like we did away with fundamental accounting, liabilities and equities, right? Assets and liabilities. We've just commingled those together and said, well, that's our GDP. It's why all of the sanctions against Russia failed, because Russia didn't do that. Russia carries liabilities on the liability side and it carries assets on the asset side, right? And yes, there is some crossover, but within reason, et cetera. So, getting through that period, the problem that we have is that in order for, and all the stuff, I can see all these things happening, and Tom Luongo talks it way better. I can see all the pieces moving. The problem is all the other people in the world, in our own country, who are living very well off of the artificial system that we have. They're not going to, it's like a bitch in a fucking divorce. She ain't going to just let that go. Right? She doesn't understand all the complexity. What she knows how to do is extort money out of you using her, the structures, the regime, right? There's no way she's going to let that go.
Well, it's the quote, right? If they're living or their well-being depends on them not understanding something, they're not going to understand it. So.
Well, that's absolutely true. Yeah. Well, and the other part is not having a fucking soul.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to add to your point, when you are trading the volatility of a volatility index, you've probably gone too far on the hyper financialization of markets.
It's just it's just gambling.
Should you be able to decide what oil or gold or other commodities should trade at in a certain future point in time, like, yes, like that's what a derivative contract should
But
be.
all of that is determined by algorithms now,
No,
and
it's all
not.
fake.
Yeah,
Like,
it's all algos.
All that trading. I mean, you see it. I could go down the rabbit hole in oil markets, but even Trump, when he's tweeting about, oh, you guys better not bid up oil or raise oil price, I'm like, you realize it's just headline. It's computers trading off of headlines.
Yeah.
There's actually some fund out there. I mean, there are some funds, but like the actual volume, I think is 80% to 85% just computer algorithms now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. All trading.
That's fucking
All trading. And it's all warfare, and it's sophisticated. I worked in that space back in early 2000s on logic systems, and we were already designing algorithms that would hunt out other algorithms and then trigger them to drive your own arbitrage play. And then by the time I was, in the Q course, they'd gotten way more sophisticated, and they had algorithms that just watch signals and the different kinds of signals and figure out the logic on the other side, and then build a counter strategy. And this shit's happening in milliseconds. It might take, a week or a month to figure out how these other algos are playing, and then to, for the system and the programmers to work on a counter strategy. But then that execution's like 40 milliseconds.
Yeah. No, I think
right, and $30 billion just changed hands. And it's happening 24/7, almost 365, because now it's in every market because Euroclear and old colleague of mine, Steve Rubinow, helped create that.
No, I think there will be a place for financial markets or stock market or something in the future that is semi-liquid, where you can buy a piece of a business, but you stop it at the point where you're screwing around with computers trading it. And so I think there's a way to do it where you have daily or weekly liquidity where you can buy and sell, but it's not 8 hours a day and then after hours.
So I fundamentally agree. So very much to what you're saying, there is one of the things that's going to come out of the conflict years, the bloody years, will be a new form of the 33 Act, the 34 Act, right? The 1942 Banking Regulation Act, Glass-Steagall. So the things that came out of the 1930s, and I don't like the way in which it was done, but that's just me, but it happened. The things that came out to regulate the speculation, manipulation of the markets and all of that came out in the 1930s around the Great Depression were actually really solid. And they worked for a long time until we went to Fiat. And then we started doing the deregulation to be able to allow the Fiat system to work. You had to keep deregulating. And the ultimate deregulation was in the 1990s. And that just basically brought down all the shit we put in place, all these firewalls for the banking and financial system, and brought those down in the 1990s. And we're living that now. In the conflict, and we already see the infrastructures there, SOFR's there, regional banking, local banking, et cetera. There's going to have to be another piece that is entirely new structures that prevent a BlackRock from ever emerging again. I mean, at some point, 100 years or so, idiots will screw it up again or whatever. But I personally believe that what's going to happen is we're going to see a drawback before World War I. I think we might see the drawback of the Westphalian model, because what is that? That's all this global financial system, banking system, et cetera. And I think we go back to like Russia and China are doing now, where it's local. They control their own currency. They control their own banking. They control their own finance. There's a system for the inside, a currency and banking, financial system for the inside. And then there's another one that deals with the outer world that's more market-based, et cetera. The one inside is a little more controlled, most likely controlled like here through the regional and local banks. And then there's the external one that's for international trade, finance, et cetera.
Yeah.
But the powers that be, and all those who have been made billionaires by unearned liquidity, the Ray Dalios, et cetera, although I don't know, he's getting older and he might, support, are going to fight to keep shit the way it is. And they'll have to be forced to it, unfortunately.
What's your kind of view on all that with financial system? I mean, maybe a little bit about your approach to it. What's your kind of view on, okay, I'm not going to go be led like a lamb to the slaughter, but there's also, there's definitely ways to maybe not like benefits specifically, but there are like certain ways to opt out. What's your view on that?
That's kind of how I look at it. Is if you don't understand the financial system and you just think it's going to fucking crater, well, you take everything you have and you put it into local resources that have hoofs and fucking fur and a house and shit like that. Also, assuming that you're dug in regionally where you're oh shit, it's fine. Cats fucking throw shit up. Regionally dug in so that if BlackRock does foreclose on your farm, well, you can be able to buy it back for a penny after all their guys end up in a fucking holler down there buried under some fucking, rocks and shit. Kind of understanding that the world that we go to next at the regional level doesn't play by the rules that we're accustomed to playing by now. And there's a lot more.
This goes back to the old rules.
Local and regionalized banking. Well, there's local and regionalized violence too.
Yes.
And you start building those structures as well. And that's not like some, we're going to march on Washington bullshit. That's more like
Washington's irrelevant at that point.
That's more like when BlackRock's fucking Pinkertons show up. Well, they're not going to get to take these assets, and that is important too. That's something that has to be done. And
they're not going to be able to buy the local sheriff or local law enforcement to try and.
He lives next door to me.
Correct. Yeah.
Eventually, those guys are going to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really think that's how you have to kind of look at it. And
it's how Russia pulled itself out. It's how China's pulling itself out.
And for particularly also like for the young guys that don't have any fucking money either. This like van life and like homesteading shit is actually great. Because you're not getting rich, but you actually own stuff and you're not accumulating debt. So.
Well, and you build, as the big chains and logistics stuff that you talked about breaks down, and you have to build relationships with local farmers and local ranchers, and you need to be able to bring something to the table that's a skill, that's of value. We talked this extensively when we were up skiing, and you and I have talked that it's like, okay, high net worth individuals. Let's say 80% of your portfolio disappears because all that unearned liquidity is getting wiped out. Well, where's your real assets?
Well,
and how the hell are you going to secure them?
It's funny because this is one of the ways I've told like my rich clients in like Texas to like diversify their portfolio. It's like, well, take a couple grand and buy the fucking chicken farmer down here. A silo full of grain. Well, I can grow more chickens. And like if all your other shit is fucked up, you guys are still friends. Yeah,
and make sure you put somebody to run that company. That's somebody that's a known and trusted entity.
Right.
And there's a multi-family generation, multi-generation, multi-family mutual benefits. So you don't just, so I talked to a high net worth client. He's like, well, we'll do, no interest loans. I was like, no, your family needs to own part of it and their family needs to own part of it. And your families need to share in the largesse of it. But what you're doing is you're establishing a multi-family, multi-generational relationship.
Right.
Not just an ownership. And then, to what you're saying, you don't just set it up as a limited partnership or no, you do it as a for stock company. One of the things that we need to do is we need to be teaching people, and they should be doing this in high school, for stock companies. Those are very solid things. Those are creating assets. Those are, assets that have liquidity. There's not so much liquidity, but there's a secondary market where there's liquidity for that. There is all kinds of sophisticated things that we can do that people are not too stupid to understand.
Right.
And we could re-collateralize our system through a whole lot of this that also is happening in that transition from the boomers to the younger generation. We could, through the local banking and regional banking systems, and then better allocation of capital from the high net worth people, create a whole lot of capital, or a whole lot of capital assets, collateralized assets. We don't need all this financialism stuff. So while we're maybe losing the 80% of the unearned liquidity, we're actually building assets back, 20, 30, 40% of assets that are solid, that are real. They're producing something, creating something. And there's jobs and there's buy-in from the communities. That's another thing that if people ask what you should do, stop buying from the big box distributors.
Which is so fucking hard to do too, though.
It's hard because the price points and...
Price point, convenience, all that stuff is extremely difficult. But it's like weeding yourself off a cereal. It's just Amazon and Walmart.
Walmazon,
yeah, no shit.
So, I think we can do this. Very much what Clay's saying, though. It's going to get a little dirty in the middle.
Yeah, there's no
way around it.
Yeah,
and one of the things that we have to be very, very aware of is government will not go down or go away without a fight, because right now it owns the legal use of violence.
Correct.
and it owns and it will. This is historically accurate. Look at the Soviets. Look at frickin' Maoist China. The governments went total fucking rapacious on their people to keep themselves paid, to keep themselves fed, to keep themselves in comfort. And they were willing to kill tens of millions of their own people to do that. You think that ain't going to happen here? Like your local government's not going to do that? You think cops that maybe are some good guys, maybe not, aren't going to, I got to go take that family out because I need to feed my family.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Right? You think that,
Yeah, I'm just doing my job.
Or, well, I'm just feeding my family. Let's put it more that way. People in California or in the West out here, like these people ain't going to flood out of those cities hungry, willing to do anything. And oh, by the way, with the cartels and all of that in there, carving up new territory. It's like people need to really think, really need to think about what does this really look like as an economic system, a financial system resets itself. We take way too much for granted. Way too much. The only real currency throughout all human history is violence. Down underneath, I don't care about your fucking I had this conversation with some Bitcoiners yesterday. I was like, I hate to tell you this, guys, but you'll just. I was like, hang on a second. I hate to tell you this, guys, but I'm not going to kill anybody for Bitcoin. And that's what it comes down to. For your system to work, for that whole fucking system to work, you have to have electricity, you have to have telecommunications, and you have to have people willing to kill to sustain the value of that currency. Because that currency on its own means nothing if it doesn't translate to physical assets somewhere. Food, housing.
The Bitcoin guys were insecure. Like, well, when I put a 44 Magnum to your head and say that I want your passcode, either you give me the passcode or your Bitcoin disappears.
I want you to shut up. I take all your keys and I destroy them.
Right.
And your Bitcoin disappeared.
Now you got, yes.
Well, I feel like that's almost going to be one of the first casualties if you get a shit hitting the fan type moment if you get a status quo slow decline or something where like the inertia kind of keeps this moving, like could Bitcoin go because dollar value goes down? Like I guess,
no,
but
it's all artificial. It's an artificial system.
My view is it's just a limited supply of computer code of nothing.
Well, I'm going to give you an example. So George Gammon is his name on Rebel Capital. He just did an experiment where he went from the U.S.-Mexico border all the way down to Colombia, and he tried to use Bitcoin and gold. Couldn't do it. Nobody knew what the hell to do with it.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you value how much gold does a state cost?
I was just saying, what's the fucking Happy Meal cost in gold?
And oh, by the way, if somebody realizes I got gold, can I fight them to keep the gold? They might not give me the stake. They might just, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like people or Bitcoin. It's like, what the hell's Bitcoin? So the problem is people don't realize that the entire construct in which they're making their decisions is artificial. Bitcoin only exists in utterly, totally artificial constructs. Same with all these other cryptocurrencies. The other problem is that gold itself only exists in certain contexts and constructs. Most people, if you go to some farmer today and say, I'm going to give you this much gold, or some rancher, they're going to be like, what the fuck am I going to do with the gold? Right. And oh, by the way, I don't want to stockpile a bunch of gold because then I got to fucking have a private army to fucking secure my gold. Right? Yeah. You take one of my cows or, you know what I mean? So people don't have a comprehension. They've never been in parts of the world where none of these things are that don't exist. Go to Iraq, go to Afghanistan, go to these other places and see how those economies actually work. See how those people secure what they have through relationships and alliances within the community. That's the problem. We become so over-technological and so much over-reliance on the rule of law, we've forgotten that down underneath, the only thing that makes any of that work is human relationships. Trusted, hard-earned, hard-maintained, constantly pruned relationships. In these times of hardship, none of that other stuff matters. In a transition where we need We need to introduce high trust as we're doing wealth transfer between generations. We're doing wealth generation and store of value and method of exchange, right? As we're doing all of that requires trust. It requires, no systems or institutions are going to be able to give that to us because the systems and institutions are being fundamentally changed or just wiped out, invalidated. The only thing that's going to make it work is relationships. Yeah. From the highest level, wealthy person locally to the poorest person in the community that still can do something that has some value, and everybody in between. So if I was going to give advice to anybody, it's time to be human again. I get it. It's ugly. It's nasty. It's hard work. It's confusing. We make a lot of mistakes. We got a lot of people doing a lot of fucked up shit. I will say though, being an older Xer, it's pretty awesome too, though. When you get it right, it's pretty fucking awesome, right?
Yeah. You're talking about rule of law there. I guess the thing I'll add is that might work great in a homogenous high trust society, and that is clearly not where.
Which is why they're flooding.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
That's going to be its own set of problems. These little ethnic fucking fiefdoms and shit, this is going to be a fucking problem.
It's already a problem in LA. It's already a problem in San Francisco, Oakland.
As things get progressively worse, though, in a lot of ways your team is already picked, and that creates conflict, and that's not good.
Well, that's the thing too, is most people, not most people, but a lot of people haven't done the mental math on what team they're on, and
it's a problem. Yeah,
a
lot of them are going to pay for it.
Well, we don't even know what the teams are at this point. To be quite honest, that's part of the problem.
Well,
probably would have kicked off a long time ago if we'd had some idea what the teams are.
Well, I don't think we'd even be in this situation if people understood.
That's probably true. There's probably some reality
have
there.
The same border issues, you not have a whole bunch of things. But
here's what's going to your point. A whole lot of people that probably are good guys are going to die.
Yes.
Because we don't know what I never saw the movie Civil War because it just looked like crap. But there was that one scene in there where the guy standing there, gun. He's like, "What kind of?"
American? Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, that's actually pretty right. So the problem. This is why I keep going back to what I was saying though. When you are a civilizational people, and you recognize that and you adhere to it, in this case, the English civilization, and you recognize and adhere to that, now you have a metric and a guideline by which you can assess the other person, whether they're black, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're in whatever. You can assess fairly quickly with 1,000-year plus analytics if that person is in group or out group. It's the only way. It's why Russia survived, because Russia's 100 plus ethnic groups. There are 140 linguistic groups. But down underneath all of that, going back 1,000 years, they're Russians. They all consider themselves Russian. And they'll fight. And it's why when we fostered the Chechenian War twice, it failed. Because what did the Russians do? They took the hits. They went back and slaughtered entire villages. Right? Good on them. Gotta love the Russians.
Put their guy in charge.
But what did they do? What they did is they called upon the Russianness and the Russian history of people there and restored them to their place in the Russian, civilization. It's why they succeeded. It's why the fight with the Uyghurs and everything we're doing to try and use the Uyghurs as an Islamic wedge into China is failing. Why? Chinese aren't slaughtering them. Chinese don't work that way. They're putting them in camps, and then they're re-educating them. What are they re-educating them on? They're giving them life skills, job skills, work skills, and they're reminding them, you're Chinese. Our enemy's over there. Our enemy isn't religion. You've lived here for fucking 700 years or 1,000 fucking years. Why are you listening to these assholes? Right?
Yeah.
We have to do that. They know that this is what has to happen. It's why they're flooding the United Kingdom, all the former English colonies, right? I hate that term, British, America, et cetera, is to deny us the recognition that we are a civilizational people of a lot of ethnicities, a lot of religions, a lot of languages, et cetera. But down underneath, we are English. And what is that? Individual sovereignty. Everybody's fucking sovereign. I don't care what level of society, to the bum in the street. You got to be responsibly sovereign. You have the right to private property, whatever the hell that property is. It's yours if you earned it and you got it right. It's your property. You got to have the right to private property be individually sovereign, because the first thing you own is self, and then a balance of power, right? No king is better than or greater than all of us, than our civilization, our society, etc. No, the common man isn't less, a balance of power between government, which we're going to have some at different levels, high net worth individuals, and the people. Those three principles are the English civilization that are unique to us. And we've got to, it's what this country was built on and was adhered to just to about the last 40 fucking years. If we can't do that, if we can't reconnect with that, this very question, we won't know, who are you? Where do you fall? Can we have a conversation? Do I need to shoot you and your family, your entire fucking family in the face right now? Because you might come around later on and kill us. I mean, they do this on purpose when they do to step 7 of the financial kill chain, the collapse, right? And then abandonment. They do this on purpose. They flood you. It's the same thing in a divorce and a bad divorce, etc. They do everything to deny you your sense of self, your own sense of reality, your ability to communicate. They separate and isolate you from your friends and your network and your family and everything else. Anybody's been through this type, because that's exactly what's happening. We are going through a nasty fucking contested divorce. And how do you do loyalty tests that are real loyalty tests? Are you someone who adheres to the principles of the English civilization, or do you not? If you do, I don't give a fuck what you look like. Now, I might care about where you're aligned and how you're aligned, and I might care about the fact you're listening to somebody you probably should, and we should have a conversation. But at least we have a baseline that's 1,000+ years old and very rich and very sophisticated, that we can work that out. We can have that conversation. We can figure that out. Otherwise, it's just a fucking shoot 'em all. And you never, I hate to say it, but you never know who's going to come out in that.
No, you don't. That is actually one of the fundamental problems of the last 60 years, and particularly the last 20 years, is the attempt to do this along fucking ethnic lines, mostly.
Or ideological lines. Yeah.
Well, the racial one is a huge problem because that's easy to fucking see.
Yeah.
That's how all the good maskers really start.
Yeah.
Fuck them guys. Let's get so that's a fucking problem.
That stuff's hardwired too.
No, it is. It's prison gangs back to all that fucking shit. Mm-hmm. And some of it's even fucking true. That is who your tribe is, to a degree, when things kick off. But prior to this happening, really like inflaming those fucking that creates a huge fucking problem. Yes, I mean that's real fucking bad.
And they fuel it. They fuel it.
They've been doing a fantastic job of it too.
Well, the most obvious one was 2 months ago. It was the black kid in Texas who was at that track.
Oh, stabbed. Yeah.
Killed him, yeah.
And then the social media, like,
it's fucking crazy.
Like they're in there fueling that.
Oh,
and it doesn't make me less pissed off.
Here's why. They want you fighting each other so you don't come, so the masters wants the slaves fighting each other.
Right.
And they'll put up a house, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Django, Samuel L. Jackson's character.
Yeah.
They'll put those up there.
Yeah.
Right? Those are to draw the problems, the conflicts, etc. Those are the sacrificial. But they want you doing this kind of fight so you don't come for the master in the house.